Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. What ifs? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto become the Dino Sage, Naruto x Jurassic World. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Naruto Uzumaki was not having a good day. He was currently plummeting down a deep ravine after his new sensei Jiraiya of the Sannin for the month-long break threw him in it to get him to summon the boss of the Toad Summons. However, no matter how much he tried as he fell, he couldn't do it, and as he continued to fall, his life began to flash before his eyes from the moment he was born to the present. He saw his eyes open for the first time and stare into the face of the Yondaime Hokage Minato Namikaze, which confused him as he wondered why he would be present for his birth. He saw the Yondaime hand him to a red-headed woman had he called Kushina, who took him and cradled him in her arms like a mother would her newborn baby. That's when it all clicked in Naruto's mind. This Kushina was his mother, which meant that if the Yondaime was there for his birth, then he must also be his father, which would make sense. Why would the Yondaime seal the Kyuubi into just some random newborn? All the power and responsibility of keeping the Kyuubi from breaking free would logically be safe and used to protect instead of destroy in the hands of someone directly related to him. Naruto saw a man appear and take him from his parents, before his father rescued him. He saw his father set him in a crib before leaving. He saw his father return with his mother, who looked extremely weak, and lay her beside him before taking the three of them to an altar. In the background he saw the Kyuubi wreaking havoc before his father transported it to in front of the altar and began some hand seals, and what looked like a creepy ghostly figure with a knife in its mouth appeared behind him with a ghostly figure in front of it wrapped in chains that looked like a man. Naruto saw the Kyuubi try to escape, but his mother had it held down with some strange golden chains that looked like they came out of her back. He saw the ghostly figure reach its hand through father's stomach and grab the Kyuubi, yanking out what looked like a ghostly form of the Kyuubi before using the knife in its mouth and slicing it from the Kyuubi before eating it, causing the Kyuubi to shrink slightly. Naruto saw his mother cough up some blood, which loosened the grip of her chains on the Kyuubi slightly, which allowed it to try and impale him with its claws. He saw his parents leap in front of the claw and get skewered as the claw came to a stop mere inches from him. Naruto then saw something that shocked him beyond belief. The Kyuubi's eyes changed before it looked down and seemed to look horrified at what it had done before a tear came to one its eyes and slid down its cheek. Before it said something that he didn't catch. Naruto saw his parents look at the Kyuubi and smile slightly and say something he didn't catch before they turned to him, and his mother tells him to grow strong. Eat his vegetables and find a nice girl to love and give her lots of grandbabies so that when he finally dies from old age he can tell her all about them with said girl, his father then says something which he doesn't catch before finishing the sealing as the Kyuubi disappears into the seal, before his mother and father collapse and crawl over to him and hold them in between them as they pass on. Naruto then saw the Sandaime show up with a few Anbu who Naruto recognizes as Inu and Neko, who would often guard him when he was younger, and he realizes that they are Kakashi-sen. Sei and Yugo Ne. Before Kakashi falls to his knees seeing the Yondaime dead, he sees the Sandaime pick him up and swear the Anbu at the scene to secrecy. He saw the meeting with the councils where Sandaime revealed his status as a Jinchuriki and the shitstorm that followed of the civilian council demanding his death, the elders demanding he be turned into a weapon, and the Shinobi Council, minus Fugaku Uchiha, all saying he should live. Naruto saw the Hokage take him to his clan's house and spend the next 2 years taking care of him before having to send him to the orphanage and the HOR. Rival 2 years he spent there before getting kicked out, and the year he spent living on the streets eating out of garbage cans and running from mobs of villagers, sometimes escaping, other times not. He remembered the first time he met two of his most precious people and how they became friends and kept knowing each other a secret. He remembered the Hokage finding him living on the streets and giving him an apartment to live in the red light district. He remembered befriending the local yakuza and brothel workers. Naruto remembered meeting 4 more of his most precious people and the day where he tragically lost one of them. He remembered when he entered the academy to become a shinobi, and the ridicule and mistreatment he received causing him to take up a mask of stupidity, the years of Consta NTLY playing the fool and chasing after a pink banshee who he would rather see out of the ninja program before she got herself or her fellow shinobi killed. Naruto smiled as he remembered his gratuity. On day and how he passed after being tricked and learning he held the Kyuubi while Iruka-sensei saw him as himself and not the Kyuubi. He remembered the horror of being stuck on the same team as the Pink Banshee and the Emotem Sasuke. However, what made it a little bearable was that he had Kakashi Ni-san as his sensei, but they kept knowing each other a secret to prevent the council from taking him off the team. He remembered all the D-rank missions he went on with his team, before going on the mission to Nami no Kuni where he ran into Zabuza Momochi and his apprentice Haku while protecting Tazuna the bridge builder. The fight between Kakashi and Zabuza, reaching Tazuna's house and meeting his daughter Tsunami and grandson Inari, and the week of training in which he met Haku and forged his own Nindo, which was to never give up, never back down, and fight to protect those precious to him. Naruto remembered saving Inari and Tsunami from Gato's thugs before rushing off to his team who were fighting Zabuza and his apprentice on the bridge, fighting Zabuza's apprentice on the bridge with Sasuke before Sasuke took a hit for him and he thought he died before subconsciously tapping into Kyuubi's chakra and beating Zabuza's apprentice who turned out to be Haku. Naruto remembered Haku telling him of his life before meeting Zabuza, before rushing off to save him and getting killed by Akashi's Chidori, which was meant for Zabuza, how he ripped into Zabuza about how Haku saw him as a father, Gato showing up with a group of thugs and revealing how he had never intended to pay Zabuza, giving Zabuza a kunai before he charges into the group before finally reaching Gato and slicing his head off, before getting stabbed a bunch of times. How he and Kakashi scared off the rest of the 2Gs as a mob of villagers showed up with a bunch of makeshift weapons, the party that night celebrating Wave's freedom from Gato, burying Haku and Zabuza, before saying goodbye to the people of Wave WH. The bridge was finished and heading back to Konaha. Getting back to Konaha and reporting on their mission, and Kakashi giving them entrance slips to the Chunin exams, entering the Chunin exams with the rest of the Rookie 9. Taking the first exam, which was a written test, a passing due to luck even though Hinata offered to let him cheat of her test and he refused, the second exam beginning, almost getting eaten by a giant snake. Saving a nice red-headed girl with glasses from a bear. Then there was fighting against Orochimaru, who then hit him with some weird seal after giving Sasuke one on his neck. Waking up to find teams 10 and Lee from team 9 helping Sakura fight off a team of genin from Otogakure until Sasuke wakes up with a evil chakra around him and brutally beats one of the sound genin by breaking both his arms. Until Sakura stops him. Kabuto helping them get the scroll they needed and barely making it to the tower in the middle of the Forest of Death where the next part of the exam would take place. The prelim fights where Sasuke, Shino, Shikamaru, the Sand siblings consisting of Tamari, Kenkuro, and Gaara, Dosu of Sound, all came out victorious and moved on to the finals. How he barely won against Kiba due to getting lucky, and how Neji won against Hinata nearly killing her and he swore on Hinata's blood and his ninja way that he will defeat Neji in the finals. How the winners of the prelim fights drew lots to determine who they would fight, with his match against Neji being the first one, followed by Sasuke vs. Gaara, Shino vs. Kenkuro, Tamari vs. Shikamaru, and Dosu fighting the winner of match 1. How Kakashi told him he had to train Sasuke for the whole month due to the council's orders, but got him a sensei which turned out to be Ebisu, and left BU. Not before slipping a note into Naruto's pocket, and upon his reading it caused him to smile and play along with Ebisu. Naruto remembers his training at the hot springs until he caught Jiraiya peeping on the women's side, which resulted in Naruto busting Jiraiya to the ladies that were bathing, which led to Jiraiya getting the shit beat out of him along with Ebisu, who was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Jiraiya taking over his training for the month, which lead to him learning how to summon toads and his current situation. As Naruto's life finished flashing before his eyes and he continued to fall, the faces of his precious people passed through his mind, his parents, the Sandame, Iruka-sensei, Kakashi, Yugao, Ayame and Tsuki, and finally his most precious people of all, his Lavender Haim, hubby queen, his Ukami goddesses. And finally his queen of cool, and a tear leaks from his eye as he thinks that he likely will never see them again. Naruto then sees a vision of all his precious people standing over his grave crying. However, none crying harder than his Haim, queens, and goddesses, and upon seeing their crying faces a fire lights in his eyes. No, I won't die here and make them cry. Naruto yells, as he goes through the summoning hand seals again to summon before yelling out, Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning Justu, and pouring as much of his chakra as possible into it, however he ended up making a mistake when doing the hand seals, and instead of summoning the boss toad he simply vanishes. John Hammond was watching the construction of the visitor center for his state-of-the-art theme park, Jurassic Park, continue when he sees the air above the visitor center and what looked like a boy in an orange jumpsuit appear out of nowhere and crash through the roof of the visitor center. Before he rushes into to see if the boy is all right. Hammond finds the boy lying in a small crater with minor cuts and bruises and immediately calls for medics as they rush to treat the boy. A few hours later the boy is still sleeping in a medical bed with Hammond right next to him when Hammond hears the door slides open and Hammond's old friend Drive Henry Wu walks in. Hammond looks to Dr. Wu. How is he, Henry? He asks, worried about the boy who looks no older than 13. Dr. Wu just sighs. That's the thing, John. When he came in here he had a few fractures and broken bones, along with some minor cuts and bruises. However, in the few hours he has been asleep all of his bones have already healed along with his cuts and bruises, he says, shocking Hammond. Something like this shouldn't be possible. It's like he has some sort of super accelerated healing factor. He finishes rubbing the bridge of his nose while thinking, it's reasons like this that I chose the field of genetics instead of regular medicine. Hammond sighs in relief hearing that the boy will be okay. Thank you, Henry, he says, getting a nod from Dr. Wu before he leaves through the door. Hammond then turns back to the boy whose eyes are starting to open and smiles. Naruto opens his eyes to see he is in some kind of hospital room, but it looks more advanced than the ones in Konaha, and rubs his head. Ouch, why do I feel I just fell through a building again? He says before noticing the old man sitting next to his bed and smiles. Hello, I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Nice to meet you, he says, getting a chuckle from the older man. Hammond smiles. Hello Naruto, the reason you feel like you fell through a building is because you did my visitor center that is still under construction, to be precise, he says, causing Naruto to rub the back of his neck and smile sheepishly. Now allow me to introduce myself. I am John Hammond, and welcome to Jurassic Park, he says before giving Naruto a handshake. End Chapter 1. New World. Chapter 2. A.N. Thank you everyone for making my story a big success already. 16 reviews, 57 favorite, and 70 follows. Wow, just wow. Kudos. Thank you, and I noticed I spelled it wrong after I had posted the chapter. Also, what Dino puns are you talking about? To everyone else who reviewed, thank you for the review and compliments. I also currently have a poll up on my profile for who will get the first lemon in my Naruto Sorian Soul story, so please vote. Naruto just stared at Hammond. What's Jurassic Park and how far is Konaha? He asks, curious as to how far he was from home. Hammond looks at Naruto. Naruto Avenue, no idea what Konaha is. You just appeared out of thin air above my visitor's center, he says, shocking Naruto, whose eyes widen hearing this, as he thinks of all the possible reasons as to why Hammond has never heard of Konaha before coming to the one he feared the most. I must have messed up the summoning jutsu and it hurled me into a new world. Naruto looks at Hammond. I see, that means I'm in a whole new world, he says, looking down and surprising Hammond. Hammond's eyes widen. Naruto, what do you mean by, you're in a whole new world? He asks, thinking he misheard Naruto. Naruto looks at Hammond and smiles. Well, I come from a world of shinobi, or as they are more commonly known, ninja, he says, shocking Hammond before telling him the history of his world, about chakra, giving him a small demonstration by creating a shadow clone, and finally telling him about his life. By the end of Naruto's story, Hammond is speechless and while saddened by some of the things that Naruto told him, like his life when he was younger. Smiles in a grandfatherly way. Naruto, for someone so young you have already done so much and overcome so much, he says. Naruto smiles. Thanks Hammond Gigi, but you never told me what Jurassic Park is, he asks, curious as to what it might be because it sounds pretty cool. Hammond smiles before telling Naruto about his dream, and what Jurassic Park is, and as he explains more and more of it, Naruto's eyes widen further and further, and after Hammond shows Naruto some pictures of the dinosaurs, Naruto's eyes have stars in them. Naruto just stares at Hammond. Hammond Gigi, that's so cool. I want to help your dream come true while I try and find a way home. Besides, I have always loved animals, he says with a smile. Hammond looks at Naruto for a minute before smiling. Thank you, Naruto. And welcome aboard, he says before getting up. Now get some rest, I will show you around and we will find something for you to do in the morning. He finishes getting a nod from Naruto before leaving the room. Naruto watches the door close before laying back down and looking at the ceiling. So I ended up in a new world. Wait until I tell Gigi and the others about this, he thinks before closing his eyes and falling asleep. Naruto opens his eyes to find himself in a sewer in ankle-deep water. Well, seeing how I was just in the medical room, this must be my mindscape, he says before taking a look around and sighing. I hope nobody back home finds out my mind is a sewer or I will never hear the end of it, he says before walking toward what he thinks is the exit. After walking for a little while, Naruto comes to a large gate with wooden bars and a tag that says seal holding it shut. Well, this must be where Kyuubi is held, he says before noticing two large red eyes open. The eyes look at him and widen before he hears a voice, hello kid. It says in a strangely deep feminine voice, surprising Naruto. Naruto stand there for a minute. Hello Kyuubi, we finally meet again, he says ousing the Kyuubi's eyes to widen, which he notices. Yes, I know about the events that took place during the night of my birth and who my parents are. I saw it happen when my life flashed before my eye. While I nearly fell to my death before ending up in this world, he says, shocking the Kyuubi even more. Kyuubi recovers from the shock. What do you mean by this world, Kit? The Kyuubi asks, curious about what Naruto just said. Naruto sighs. How about I just show you all my memories, it will be quicker than having to explain it. He suggests, getting a nod from the Kyuubi before Naruto shows all of his memories, and by the end, Kyuubi is pissed. Kyuubi slams its paw into the floor and yells, how dare they treat you like that? If Kushina-chan and Minato-kun saw any of this, they would have let the village burn to the ground. It says before calming down a little. Naruto, I'm so sorry for everything you have gone through in your life, the Kyuubi apologizes. Naruto just shakes his head before smiling. It's not your fault, Kyuubi. I saw what happened the night I was born and how you looked like your world had just come crashing down around you when you realized what you did, he says, causing the Kyuubi's eyes to widen. Naruto just smiles before continuing. I know that my parents loved me and that is enough for me. Also, I can tell that you aren't the evil demon that everyone makes you out to be. You are just lonely, he says, shocking the Kyuubi, who can't believe what it's hearing before Naruto continues. I would like to know about your past and how you and my mother came to know each other, he says, causing the smile. The Kyuubi looks at Naruto, seeing so much of Kushina and Minato in him. You're right, Naruto, they loved you beyond belief and couldn't wait for you to be born so all of you could be a family, Kyuubi says, causing small tears to form in the corner of Naruto's eyes. You are also right about me, Naruto. I am not evil and have actually never even hurt someone by my own will, Kyuubi says before telling Naruto about its past. Kyuubi tells Naruto how she and the other tailed beasts came to be, which shocked Naruto that Kyuubi was actually a girl, but quickly got over it as Kyuubi continued her story. She told Naruto how Madara Uchiha put her under a genjutsu to fight the first Hokage, how she was sealed into Mito Uzumaki, how she was sealed into Naruto's mother when Mito was close to dying, how she and Kushina became friends and later saw each other as sisters, and finally about Kushina's life before the night Naruto was born. Naruto smiles as he wipes a tear from his eyes before walking through the bars and hugging Kyuubi. Thank you, Kyuubi, for telling me about my mother and yourself, he says as a tear comes to Kyuubi's eyes. Naruto looks up and smiles. Do you have a and form and a name? He asks, curious if she has one, as it seems a little weird to just call her Kyuubi. Naruto just stares at what he can only describe as beauty personified. Before he comes to his senses, beautiful, he manages to get out, causing Kurumi to blush slightly. Naruto snaps out of his stupor. So Kurumi, do you think there is any way for us to get back home? He asks, a little hopeful that maybe she will know a way. Kurumi thinks for a minute. I don't know, Naruto. We might be here for a while, if not stuck here, but I have an idea on how to get you home, and that is to reverse summon you. Since we already know that it was summoning that got us here, she says, causing Naruto's to widen with hope before what she says next nearly shatters it. The problem is that since you have never summoned the boss of the toads, they don't recognize you as one of their summoners yet, she says a little sadly. Naruto just sighs. I was afraid of that, he says before an idea comes to mind. What if we were to make a new summoning contract? And then reverse summon back to the summon realm, because aren't all summon contracts automatically linked there when they are made? He asks, causing Kurumi's eyes to widen. Kurumi thinks for a minute. That just might work, Naruto, she says, causing Naruto to smile. Naruto's smile suddenly falls when he remembers something. Kurumi, do you have any idea why my chakra control and usage is so out of whack? Normally it feels like a raging river, but now it feels like a little trickle, he says, curious as to why his chakra is so messed up. Kurumi thinks for a minute. Before checking Naruto's chakra system and finding something that causes her to narrow her eyes in anger. Naruto, I need to know if someone ever jammed their hand into your abdomen while their fingers were glowing, she says, having an idea of what it might be. Naruto's eyes widen. Yeah, in the forest of death during the second exam, Orochimaru hit my stomach with his hand and it was glowing. Why? He asks, curious as to how that would make a difference. Kurumi growls and stomps her foot, sending shockwaves through Mindscape. That slimy snake bastard. She yells before calming down and looking to Naruto. Naruto, he hit you with a 5-point seal which not only blocks a lot of your chakra but also disrupts it. That is why your chakra feels that way and why you couldn't summon any of the toads bigger than a tadpole. Not to mention that perverted idiot Jiraiya didn't even think to check if you had a seal on you, she says, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. Naruto narrows his eyes. That fucking pervert. Idiot, not only does he throw me down a fucking cliff, he does it without even thinking that there might be something wrong with my chakra beforehand, he yells, causing the Mindscape's walls to shake a little. When we get back to our world, the first thing I am going to do is shove my foot so far up his ass that he will taste his own shit on the bottom of my sandal, before I cut his balls off with a rusty kunai and feed them to him, he finishes before looking to Kurumi and raising his eyebrow. Kurumi just watches Naruto go on his tirade of what he is going to do to Jiraiya, which causes her to be lush at the dominating aura he is giving off before she notices him finished and clears her throat. Now I can remove the seal, Naruto, but it will take time due to me having to basically overload it piece by piece so that there isn't any damage to your chakra coils. Not to mention it will take time for me to create the summon contract and we need to find an animal to tie it to, she says, getting a nod from Naruto. Naruto smiles. It's alright, Kurumi-chan, and don't worry about the animal, we will find something, he says, causing her to nod. Now how about I change the scenery since I doubt it's very comfortable in a sewer, he says before the Mindscape starts to shake before the sewer disappears. The sewer changes into a large meadow with a lake and waterfall. Off in the distance is a large 2-story Japanese-style mansion. The bars of the cage and the seal disappear and a ring with the word seal engraved on it appears on Kurumi's finger. Naruto looks to Kurumi and smiles at her shocked expression. So do you like it? He asks before Kurumi glomps him, burying his head in her bountiful bust. Kurumi snuggles Naruto into her chest before noticing his face turning blue and his soul start to leave his mouth before she panics before stuffing his soul back down his throat, causing him to take in a deep breath. Oh sweet air, how I miss thee, he says before taking a few more deep breaths and muttering. I almost died there, but what a way to go, and looking at Kurumi, who is blushing slightly and smiles. I take it by your reaction you like the changes, Kurumi-chan, he says. Kurumi smiles. Yes, Naruto-kun, it's beautiful, she says before blushing and thinking. Naruto-kun, where did that come from? As Naruto just tilts his head to the side looking at her. Naruto shakes his head. Well, I better walk up, Kurumi-chan, have fun looking around your new accommodations, he says before giving her a hug and disappearing from the Mindscape. Naruto wakes up to see that it is morning and gets up from the bed and does some stretches until he notices the door open and Hammond step in. Good morning, Hammond Gigi, he says while he finishes his stretches. Hammond chuckles. Good morning, Naruto, ready for the tour and finding out what your job will be, he asks before smiling seeing Naruto already dressed and ready to go. Hammond gives Naruto a tour of the main building, showing him the control room, kitchen, and incubation hatching room, and it was in the incubation hatching room that something amazing happened. Naruto was looking at the eggs when he hears cracking and notices 2 of the eggs hatching. Hammond Gigi, these 2 eggs are hatching, he yells, getting Hammond and Dr. Wu's attention as they rush over. Naruto turns back around to look at the eggs and smiles when he sees two little heads poking out and staring at him like he is their parent before letting out a cute roar and nuzzling their heads into Naruto's palm. Hammond and Dr. Wu arrive to see the two dinosaurs nuzzling into Naruto's paw, causing them to chuckle. Well, looks like we have found your job, Naruto, Hammond says, surprising drive. Naruto looks over to Hammond and tilts his head to the side, which the two little dinosaur Bobby see and imitate. What do you mean, Hammond Gigi? He asks, curious as to what his job will be. Hammond smiles. Those two baby Tyrannosaurus Rex have imprinted on you, meaning they think that you are heir parent, he says, chuckling a little at Naruto's expression. Now due to this you will be one of the dinosaur handlers, and your job will be to take care of the dinosaurs, he finishes explaining. Naruto smiles. I accept, Hammond Gigi, he says before turning to the two baby T-Rex. Hey there little ones, I'm your daddy Naruto, welcome to the world, he says, smiling as the babies let out a tiny roar. Now how about I name you too, Naruto says before thinking a minute. I got it, how about I name you Fang, he says to the one whose teeth are a little bigger. And I name you Jade, he says to the one who skin is a darker shade of green. Would you two like that, he asks before getting two tiny squeals are his answers. Hammond smiles at the scene. Now Naruto, Fang and Jade have to spend a few days under observation to make sure they are healthy, but you will be able to visit them every day, and after that you will be able to look after them, he says, getting a nod from Naruto. Naruto smiles as he looks at Fang and Jade. Alright you two, I will see you every day, so get some rest and be good, okay? He says, getting a nod from the two babies as he hears two voices in his head. Yes father, the two voices say, surprising Naruto. Naruto's eyes widen. Did you two just talk with me through a mental link? He asks, causing Hammond and Dr. Wu's eyes to widen hearing this before they look to see the Wo babies nod their heads as if they understood Naruto and were answering his question. Naruto turns to Hammond. Well Hammond Gigi, it looks like I somehow have a mental link with Fang and Jade. I can hear and talk to them mentally, he says, shocking them before he hears a familiar voice in his head that he recognizes as Kurumi. Kurumi sees what's happening from within the mindscape and chuckles. Naruto, I think the mental link between you and those babies is a side effect of the mental link I established with you, she says, causing Naruto's eyes to widen before he mentally chuckles when Fang and De asks if Kurumi is their mother, causing Kurumi to sputter and blush slightly. Naruto turns to Hammond. Okay Hammond Gigi, how about we finish the tour, he says, getting a nod from Hammond before he too RNS back to Fang and Jade. Now you two be good, I will be back soon, okay, he says, getting a nod from the two baby T-Rexes before they go to sleep. Naruto and Hammond then leave to continue the tour. Time skip 5 years later. It had been 5 years since Naruto arrived in what he had named the Jurassic Park world, and a lot had happened in that time. First, after Fang and Jade were given a clean bill of health, he had begun taking care of them and was amazed at how fast they grew. After a few months, Kurumi had been able to remove the 5-point seal that Orochimaru had placed on him, and he had spent own time getting used to his chakra again and training with it as he took care of Fang and Jade. A year after his arrival, Naruto gained another child when he was present at the birth of a baby velociraptor that he named Sabine. After Sabine was given a clean bill of health, Hammond allowed Naruto to take care of her like he did with Fang and Jade, who upon learning they had a little sister were ecstatic even if she was a different species. For the next 4 years Naruto took care of Sabine, Jade, and Fang while training himself in his ninja skills, and working on the summoning scroll with Kurumi. And after Naruto had removed some of the seal and met his parents who had sealed some of their chakra in him, and having a happy reunion before Naruto, Kurumi and Kushina beat the living hell out of Minato for doing something as stupid as sealing Kurumi into Naruto. Kushina and Minato began teaching him their skills while helping him make the summon contract before they ran out of the chakra they had stored in the seal and passed on. Naruto had also been promoted to lead dinosaur handler after it was discovered that his mental link wasn't restricted to just Fang, Jade, and Sabine when he med down a triceratops who was having a minor rampage when it stepped on a spike. Naruto and his Dino kids, as many had come to nickname them, had also moved to Isla Sorna where most of the other Azores were when they were growing up before they were brought to Isla Nublar in the actual park. Naruto was currently standing before a nearly full-grown Jade and Fang who were standing around 20 feet tall and 40 feet long. And a full-grown Sabine who was standing around 6 feet tall and 10 feet long, as the wind and rain battered them and people evacuated. Naruto had just received a call from Mond who had informed him that Jurassic Park had a catastrophic breakout due to one of its computer analyses sabotaging the system, causing many of the dinosaurs to break out of their paddocks, and He virus was spreading to all of systems on every island, which was forcing everyone to evacuate. Naruto looked at Jade, Fang, and Sabine. You three understand what has happened, right? He asks Geddon. A nod from the three as he had just told them everything that had happened. Naruto smiles sadly. Now you understand that I have to go, right? Again he gets another set of nods, but he could tell they were sad. Naruto raises his hands as rubs Jade and Fang's snouts as they lower their heads, before he rubs the top of Sabine's head. Now Fang, Jade, I want the two of you to look after each other, and Sabine, you go to the other raptors. And I promise you that I will come back. It might take a little while, but I promise I will be back, he says as a few tears form in his eyes and he gets nods from the three of them. Naruto smiles. Now the three of you will be fine on your own for a little bit. After all, you are my children, he says, smiling as they nod their heads. Jade and Fang lick his cheeks. Goodbye for now, father, and tell mother. We will miss her, they say through the mental link, causing Naruto to chuckle a little at the fact that all three of his children had come to see Kurumi as a mother when they talked through the mental link. Sabine rubs her head against his chest. Take care, father, I will make you proud by becoming the leader of the pack, she says, causing Naruto to smile as Sabine had always said she would become the leader of the other velociraptors on the island. Naruto smiles. I know you will, Sabine, and I am already proud of all of you, he says before noticing the boat getting ready to leave. Now I have to go. Stay safe, you three, and I will be back before you know it, he says before the three of them nod and give him one last lick before leaving. Naruto watches them leave. Before he thinks, stay safe, my loving children, I will be back for you, I promise. And Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze always keeps his promises, before he boards the boat with the others. One of the other workers notices Naruto staring at the island as they leave and walks up to him before placing his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Don't worry about them, Naruto, your kids are the strongest and smartest of all the dinosaurs on the island. They will be fine until you can get back, he says, trying to comfort Naruto. Naruto just smiles. Yeah, they will, after all they are my kids, he says before going inside to get some sleep before he has to meet Hammond, who he had just learned barely made it off of Isla Nublar with his grandkids and the group he brought to test the park. Return to Isla Sorna, Chapter 3, and thank you everyone who read, follow, and reviewed last chapter. It means a lot to me to see everyone enjoying my story. Now onto some reviews. GameLover 41592, yes, Naruto will be returning to Konoha in either this chapter or the next one. Shadow Mercer 99, maybe, I haven't decided yet. Naruhinalover 20, no, Naruto will not stay 8 years older due to the 3-year time skip between the first movie and the second movie. He will return to his 13-year-old body due to no time having passed since he was pulled into the Jurassic Park universe. Shigeru Toshiro, no, he didn't remove the 5 elements seal. Dragon Pony 022, I always nice to see another review from you. Now did you mean Shion? Because I don't recall there being a character in Naruto named Shiho, and as for what skills he picked up in Jurassic Park universe, he won't have any really. The only thing he will bring back with him besides the dinosaurs is the outfit he is wearing and an iPod. Grave Wolf, no, I personally don't like the idea of the feathered dinosaurs that were shown in the Jurassic Park universe, the raptors in particular from the 3rd movie. Now to everyone else who reviewed saying how much they liked my story, thank you. It had been 3 years since Naruto had been forced to evacuate Isla Sorna, leaving behind his children, 3 long years of agonizing waiting and hoping they were safe. However, Naruto had just received a call from Hammond saying he was putting a team together to go back to the island, and was currently on his way to Hammond's house to meet with him. Naruto smiles as he pulls up to Hammond's mansion before he shuts his motorcycle off and removes his helmet before walking into the mansion and spotting 2 familiar people, Lex and Timmy, Hammond's grandkids. Hey you two, it's been a while, he-s. Ays getting their attention before they rush over to him. Lex runs up to Naruto and gives him a hug which he returns. Naruto, how are you? It's been so long, she says, happy to see the man she has a small crush on. Naruto smiles as he releases Lex from the hug. I'm doing good, Lex, and sorry about it being so long since my last visit. I have been getting some stuff ready for a big event coming up, he-s. Ays before looking at Timmy. Hey Timmy, how have you been? He asks with a smile to the boy he considers his little brother. Timmy smiles. I have been good, Naruto-Nisan. Most of my time has been spent on school and studying more about dinosaurs, he says to the man he considers his older brother. Naruto smiles hearing this. Even after everything Lex and Timmy went through in Jurassic Park, Timmy didn't let it destroy his love of dinosaurs and still wants to be a paleontologist. That's good to hear. I'm sure you will be a great paleontologist when you get older and likely surpass Drive Grant. He saw YS, knowing how much Timmy looks up to Dr. Alan Grant, who not only guided them through Jurassic Park but also became like a father figure to Timmy. Lex smiles as she watches Naruto and her brother interact when she realizes something. Naruto, are you here to see Grandpa? She asks, thinking must be the reason he is here. Naruto nods. Yeah, he is putting a team together to go to Isla Sorna and I am on of the people on the team, he says, shocking Lex and Timmy. Besides, what kinds of father would I be if I didn't keep a promise I made to my kids, he says, leaving Lex and Timmy with their jaws on the floor. Timmy snaps out of his shock first. Wait, you have kids, Naruto-Nisan? He asks, finding it hard to believe that Naruto has kids already. Naruto laughs. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that to the T. Woe of you, didn't I? He says before pulling out his wallet and opening it before taking out two pictures of Naruto, Jade, Fang, and Sabine when they were babies, and one where they were older that was taken shortly before he had to evacuate the island, and shows them to Lex and Timmy. Lex and Timmy look at the pictures and can't believe their eyes when they see Naruto with two T-Rex and a Velociraptor. After all of home appear to be nuzzling up against him. Lex then asks the question that is on both of their minds. Wait, you mean your kids are a pair of T-Rex and a Velociraptor? She says in disbelief at what she is seeing. Naruto smiles. Yeah, their names are Fang, Jade, and Sabine, he says, pointing to each of them respectively. They are my pride and joy, he says with a smile as Lex hands the pictures back to Naruto and he puts them back into his wallet. Timmy pinches himself to make sure he isn't dreaming, and upon realizing he isn't, looks to Naruto. How did you become their father? He asks, curious about the story behind it all. Naruto smiles. Well, I was the first thing Fang and Jade saw when they hatched, which resulted in them imprinting on me. The same thing happened when Sabine was born, he says, getting nods. When Fang and Jade were born, I discovered that I had a mental link with them that allowed me to communicate with them, he says, causing their eyes to nearly pop out of our heads. After your grandpa found this out, I became one of the dinosaur handlers and raised Fang, Jade, and Sabine on Isla Sorna before I had to evacuate with the other workers when the computer systems were corrupted when Jurassic Park went down, he says, getting another set of nods from Lex and Timmy. Naruto smiles again. Before I left, I promised them I would come back for them, he says before he notices a group of the Ingen board of directors walk down the staircase, causing him to scowl as they walk past. Naruto looks to Lex and Timmy, getting a nod from them. Well, I will see you two later. I better go meet with Hammond Gigi, he says before giving Lex another hug and patting Timmy on the head and heading up the stairs. Meanwhile, in Hammond's bedroom, he had just finished talking to Ian Malk. Omen explaining how Ian's girlfriend Sarah was on the island already when the doors to his bedroom open, and Hammond smiles seeing who it is. And here is the final member of your team, Ian, he says, gesturing to the person who just walked in. Meet Naruto Uzumaki. He will be your guide when you reach the island, he says as Ian turns to look at the person who just came in. Ian gives the man a quick once over, noticing Naruto's spiky blonde hair, blue eyes, and what looks like whiskers on his cheeks with 3 on each side. Naruto is wearing a tight black shirt that hugs his chest and shows off his chiseled chest. Crimson red pants and black combat boots, and finally a white trench coat with red flames at the bottom that goes down to his mid-calf. Ian gets a glimpse at the back of the trench Koden notices the Jurassic Park logo with the words, Dino Sage, above it and raises an eyebrow. Naruto notices Ian looking at him strangely and chuckles, nice to meet you Ian Malcolm, as Hammond J. I said I am Naruto Uzumaki and I will be your guide when we reach the island, he says extending his arm and shaking Ian's hand. Ian lets go of Naruto's hand and looks to Hammond. John, are you sure about this? I mean, he is just a kid, he says before he hears Naruto yell out that he is 23. Hammond chuckles. Trust me Ian, there is no one more suited and capable of guiding your team than Naruto, he says with a smile. Naruto here was the lead dinosaur handler before the incident at Jurassic Park, and your team's safety will be guaranteed thanks to him being with you, he says, causing Ian to raise an eyebrow again. Ian just looks at Naruto for a minute before shaking his head. All right Naruto, meet me at this address in 2 hours, he says before handing Naruto a slip of paper and walking out the door, closing it behind him. Naruto watches the door close and looks to Hammond before walking over and giving him a hug, which Hammond returns. It's good to see you again Hammond Gigi, he says before releasing the hug. Naruto helps Hammond get back in bed before his eyes take on a serious look. Hammond Gigi, why were there directors of the board here, he says, not liking that they were bothering Hammond. Hammond just sighs. There was an incident a few weeks ago where a British family on vacation stumbled across Isla Sorna and their little girl was attacked by some compies, he says, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. The board took this as an opportunity to strip me of my place as CEO and have basically made me a figurehead for the company, he says, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow. Hammond sighs, knowing that what he is about to tell Naruto will upset him greatly. They have taken custody of the islands away from me and I fear they are going to send people to either exterminate or capture the dinosaurs on the islands, he says before noticing Naruto's eyes turn bloody red with black slits for pupils. Calm down Naruto, we're not going to let that happen, that is one of the reasons I set up this expedition to the island, he says, calming Naruto down. Hammond sees Naruto calm down and smiles. I was able to use the last of my power in the company to petition for the islands to be classified as a nature preserve, which would protect the dinosaurs from being taken from the island or harmed in any way, he says, getting a nod from Naruto. Hammond continues explaining the situation. The team's job is to catalog every species on the island so that they can be documented, he says, getting another nod from Naruto. Naruto sits there absorbing everything Hammond is telling him. Hammond Gigi, the board aren't like this and will likely try to either impede our cataloging or in the worst case scenario try and take the dinosaurs from the island to bring them to a park they are building in secret or below CKED away somewhere, he says with a frown. Hammond nods his head. That's my thought exactly, which is where Operation E comes in, he says, narrowing his eyes. Naruto nods. I was thinking the same thing, he says, getting a nod from Hammond. I have everything ready and just need to place the markers at the 4 corners of the island and it will be done, he says, getting another nod from Hammond. Naruto sighs. However, Operation E will only work for Isla Sorna since I wasn't able to link it to Isla Nubar, he says with a small frown. Hammond nods before looking down for a minute. It's not your fault, Naruto, you are still able to save Isla Sorna and all of the dinosaurs that inhabit it, he says, trying to cheer Naruto up. Besides, Isla Nubar will be fine, remember the security that is guarding it, he says, getting a nod from Naruto. Naruto nods his head and smiles slightly, remembering the special security system that he set up around the island when he brought Fang, Jade, and Sabine over there for a quick checkup a year before the incident. You're right, it should be safe for at least 15 to 20 years, which will give the dinosaurs more than enough time to breed and increase their populations enough so that they can defend themselves, he says, getting a nod from Hammond. Naruto reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small box and hands it to Hammond. This is some extra insurance for after I activate Operation E. If there is ever a time that you need my help, open the box and follow the instructions inside, he says, getting a nod from Hammond. Hammond takes the box and puts it in a safe place. Before turning back to Naruto, thank you Naruto, now you should probably get going, he says, getting a nod from Naruto before giving the young man who had become like another grandson to him one final hug before he leaves. I will not be going into great detail about the trip to the island and what happens there except for some dialogue, key scenes and when Ian's team leaves the island, and will instead just do a summary. 2 hours later Naruto met up with Ian at the warehouse and met the rest of the team, which included the tech guy Eddie, and the photographer Nick. After getting all the gear, which included 2 customized cars and a dual-trailer RV and something Eddie called a hide, they hitched a ride on a boat to Isla Sorna, and after setting up camp by a cliff which Naruto had AF Ealing would come to bite them in the ass later, they set out to find Sarah. They ended up finding Sarah photographing some Stegosaurus, and after she got too close to one of the babies Naruto had to rush and save her by calming down the Stegosaurus. The group, now with Sarah in tow, returned to the camp to find a small fire going and Ian's daughter Kelly, who had stowed away on board the RV, making dinner. After an argument broke out between Ian, Kelly, and Sarah, they heard the sound of helicopters and looked to see a large group of helicopters carrying vehicles and supplies, all of which had Ingen on them, which caused Naruto to narrow his eyes. The group followed the helicopters to a large plain where they found the Ingen group capturing dinosaurs, which caused the group to narrow their eyes and formulate a plan to free the dinosaurs. That night Naruto, Sarah, and Nick snuck into the Ingen camp and let out all the dinosaurs that Ingen had captured, and upon seeing a few familiar dinosaurs, Naruto nearly stormed into the camp and confronted the Ingen group before he and Nick heard the wailing of a dinosaur in pain and rushed off to find it. Naruto and Nick found a baby T-Rex chained to the ground with its leg injured and quickly got it out of there before carrying it back to Sarah, and they got in the car and drove back to camp. On the way they passed Eddie, who was setting up the hide, and it started to rain heavily. Upon reaching camp they immediately carried the baby Rex inside, much to Ian's protest, and after he left to take Kelly to the hide, due to her being scared to the noises the baby Rex were making would attract other dinosaurs. After finding out that the baby Rex had a broken leg, they began healing it by resetting the leg before wrapping it in a cast. Right as they finished the cast, Ian burst through the door asking if it would kill them to answer the phone right before one of the cars they brought went sailing past the RV's window and over the cliff. He group turned to see the parents of the baby Rex on either side of the trailer looking through the windows at the baby Rex, and upon getting a good look at the parents Naruto smiled. Naruto looks to Ian, Sarah, and Nick, who are terrified and hiding. Don't worry, as soon as they get their baby they will leave, he says, getting nods from them before he picks the baby Rex up and walks to the door with them close behind him. Naruto opens the door and walks out before standing in front the adult T-Rex and gently sets the baby down before it runs up to the parents, who check to see if it is okay before looking at Naruto, who is smiling. It's good to see you two again, Fang Jade, both of you sure have grown, he says through the mental link. The 2 adult T-Rex eyes widen slightly as they hear the voice in their head, "Father, is that you?" They both ask through the link, hoping that the man before them is their father. Naruto smiles and nods his head. "Yes, my children, it is I, and I have returned Saint like I promised," he says through the link before he notices them crying slightly before they lower their heads and nuzzle him as he pets the sides of their snouts. Fang and Jade stop nuzzling Naruto and raise their heads and look at Naruto. "Father, we would like you to meet your grandchild Rexon," they say, gesturing to the baby Rex with their heads before nudging the baby Rex forward to meet with Naruto. Naruto smiles at the baby Rex and kneels down so he is eye level with it. "Hello Rexon, it's nice to meet you," he says through the mental link. The baby Rex looks at Naruto before tilting its head slightly. "Are you the one mommy and daddy call father?" it asks through the mental link. Naruto chuckles and nods his head. "Yes, I am Rexon. Your mommy and daddy are my children, which makes you my grandchild," he says before Rexon runs forward and nuzzles him as Naruto wraps his around him. After a few minutes Naruto releases Rexon and he runs back over to his parents. Naruto stand back up and looks at Fang and Jade. "Have you two been in contact with Sabine?" he asks, curious about his other child. Fang and Jade nod their heads. "Yes, we recently found out that she has become the leader of the Velociraptors," Fang says, getting a nod from Jade. Naruto smiles at hearing that his little Sabine had accomplished her dream to become the leader of the Velociraptors. "Good to hear she accomplished her dream, and it will make things a lot easier," he says with a smile. "Now I need the 3 of you to return to your nest and spread the word that I'm back, and Operation E will be carried out soon, so they need to gather around the nest. However, don't tell Sabine, I will tell her myself," he says, getting nods from Fang and Jade before they nuzzle against him again quickly before leaving with Rexon. Naruto turns around to see Sarah, Nick, and Ian all standing outside the trailer with their eyes wide open and their jaws on the ground, which causes him to raise an eyebrow and ask, "What?" nearly causing them to fall over. Ian just looks at Naruto. "What? What do you mean what? What was all that?" he yells, getting nods from Sarah and Nick. "You just walked out there and gave them the baby," they stare at you before nuzzling against you, and you pet them. Then you hug the baby Rex, followed by being nuzzled by the adults before they just turn around and leave with the baby. He yells, not believing what he just saw. Naruto just laughs. "Well, it's because they are my kids, and the baby Rex is my grandson," he says, which once again causes their jaws to hit the ground. Sarah is the first to recover. "Wait, how are they your kids?" she asks, getting a nod from Nick. Naruto once again chuckles. "Well, that's simple, I'm not from this world," he says, getting WTF expressions from the three of them. 10 years ago, I was working on something in my homeworld and it backfired, which resulted in me getting flung into your world, where I appeared right above Hammond's visitor center on Island Nubar and proceeded to crash through the roof. Naruto chuckles at their expressions. "Hammond found me and got me medical help, and after waking up I told him my story and he told me about his dream, so I decided to help him while I searched for a way to return home." Naruto smiles, remembering that day. "After agreeing to help him, Hammond gave me a tour which ended in the incubation room, where I was the first person that Fang and Jade saw when they hatched, and they imprinted on me," he says with a smile. Naruto take a breath before continuing. "I also discovered that I have a mental link that allows me to communicate with dinosaurs, and after revealing this to Hammond, he made me the lead dinosaur handler," he says, shocking them. Sarah looks at Naruto for a minute before she realizes something. "Wait, you can communicate mentally with all species of dinosaurs?" she asks, curious as to the extent of his abilities. Naruto nods his head. "Yeah, I can communicate with all species of dinosaurs mentally. In addition, I can also communicate vocally," he says, remembering how he started learning how to communicate with Sabine in Velociraptor. All of a sudden they all hear a creaking and turn to see the RV roll of the cliff and explode when it hits the rocks below. "Did someone forget to put the parking brake on?" he asks before Sarah and Ian turn to look at Nick, who chuckles sheepishly and says, "Oops." Naruto just sighs before he turns around to find the Ingen group walking up to them along with Eddie and Kelly, the latter of the running to Ian and hugging him. Naruto smirks when he spots someone familiar in the group, but keeps it to himself for now. "Yo, fancy meeting all of you out here," he says, getting sweat drops from the entire Ingen group. The apparent leader of the Ingen group walks forward. "I should have known OND would try something like this," he says with a scowl. Naruto glares at the man. "Oh, shut the hell up and go sit in timeout, Peter," he says to the now named Peter, getting a few snickers from the Ingen group while his group bursts out laughing. Naruto snickers as he sees Peter fume. "Well, now that we're all stuck here, we better head to the old control building and send a message for a pickup, because that's the only place that will have a radio to do so," he says with a smile before the group begins to leave. As the group walks, Naruto walks up to the man he recognized and smiles. "It's been a while, Roland," he says with a smile. The now named Roland smiles. "That it has, Naruto. I had a feeling you would be here, knowing Hammond," he says, getting a chuckle from Naruto and a raised eyebrow from Ian, who had just walked up to them. Ian looks between Roland and Naruto. "How do you two know each other?" he asks, curious and a little suspicious on how the two know each other. Naruto chuckles. "Roland was one of the security personnel who was hired secretly back when I was the lead Dino handler," he says with a smile before looking over to Roland. "I'm guessing since you're here, that means that Hammond secretly hired you to keep an eye on the Ingen group from within?" he asks. Roland nods. "Yeah, Hammond thought it would be a good idea if you guys had someone on the inside," he says with a chuckle before returning serious. "Naruto, we can't let the Ingen group leave the island, otherwise they will just try again at a later date," he says as he narrows his eyes. Naruto nods his head. "I agree, that's why I'm going to enact Operation E after I get Hammond's group, you and RJ, off the island," he says, getting a nod from Roland. "Now don't worry about the Ingen group," he says, causing Roland to open his mouth to say something before Naruto interrupts him. Think Roland, what do we have to cross before we reach the compound, he says with a sinister smile. Roland suddenly realizes what Naruto is talking about. Uten smiles. Naruto, you are without a doubt a evil genius, he says, getting a chuckle from Naruto and RJ. Ian just watches this interaction and is confused. What is Operation E and what are you going to do to the Ingen group? He asks. Naruto smiles at Ian before leaning over and whispering what Operation E is causing Naruto's eyes to widen. Now before we make it to the compound we have to see our Ost Velociraptor territory, he says, causing Ian to pale and Naruto to chuckle at his reaction. Don't worry, because Fang and Jade told me that my other child will be able to get us across safely, he says, causing Ian to relax a little. Ian then realizes something. Wait, what's your other child? He asks, curious as to what Naruto's other child could be if two of his kids are T-Rex. Naruto and Roland smile, knowing that Ian's reaction will be priceless when Naruto tells him, my other child is Sabine and she is a Velociraptor, and she has also become the leader of the Velociraptors, he says before E and Roland laugh at Ian's stupefied expression and continue on their way as Naruto discreetly makes 4 shadow clones to go and begin the preparations for Operation E when he left to take a bathroom break. For 2 days the group walks while trying to avoid carnivorous dinosaurs. However, one of the Ingen group wanders off while taking a leak and ended up getting killed by a group of compies. It was night time on the second day and Naruto was secretly meeting with Ian and Roland and RJ when he receives the memory that his clones were finished setting up. Naruto looks to Roland and Ian. My clones are finished with the preparations for Operation E, so I will go ahead of everyone and meet with the Velociraptors to establish safe passage for our group, along with you and RJ, he says, looking to Roland as he said the last part and getting nods from the both of them before he leaves. Naruto leaves the group and walks to the edge of the tall grass that is the border of the Velociraptors territory and thinks, well, here goes nothing, and begins to make raptor calls for a few minutes until a small group of raptors appear in front of him. The raptors circle around him before the apparent leader of the small group walks up to Naruto. Who are you and how do you know our language? He says through the mental link while glaring at Naruto. Naruto looks the raptor straight in the eyes. I am Naruto Uzumaki, father of Sabine, and wish to speak to the leader of the pack to allow safe passage for my group through your territory, he says through the mental link, surprising the raptors. All of the raptors bow to Naruto. Forgive us, Naruto-sama, we did not know it was you. Lady Sabine has told us much about you and that when you appear we are to take you directly to her, the leader says. Naruto smiles. Thank you, now raise your heads, you are proud Velociraptors, he says as the raptors raise their heads. Now how about we go see my daughter, I have missed her greatly the last 3 years, he saw. Before the raptors nod their heads and surround Naruto in a protective formation that causes Naruto to smile, seeing that Sabine had taught them the tactics that he taught her. After walking for a few minutes, Naruto and the group reach the nest of the raptors and Naruto smiles seeing Sabine standing there. Hello my little Sabine, it has been too long, I have missed you, he says, causing Sabine to rush at him and nuzzle her head into his chest as he hugs her. Sabine was watching one of her groups lead a blonde-haired human to her when she suddenly hears the human speak in her mind and realizes T is her father and rushes over to him before nuzzling her head into his chest as he hugs her. Father, I have missed you, she says as he hugs her. Naruto smiles. I know I have missed you too, he says with a smile. I already met with Fang and Jade, he says, getting a nod from Sabine as he releases her from the hug. Now Sabine, Operation E will be put into action in a little while, but before that I need you and your pack to take care of some people, he says with a smirk that Sabine recognizes and gives one herself as best as a Velociraptor could. Sabine looks at Naruto. Of course father, what do you need me and my pack to do, she says, looking forward to the hunt. Naruto smiles seeing her enthusiasm. There is a group of people who want to hurt everyone on this island, however they are trying to get in contact with their allies so that can bring more people here. They must not leave the island, he says, getting a nod from her. However, there is a small group that is with me that are trying to protect everyone on the island so they will be allowed passage. Sabine nods again. I will lead the first group to the edge of the territory and signal for your pack to attack. Once the pack wipes out Everyone in that group I will signal again and lead the second group through safely. Understood, smiling as he finishes explain his plan. Sabine looks at Naruto and nods her head. Understood father, we shish. I'll leave none alive and show them why no one harms our precious people and the pack, she says, getting a smile from Naruto as he sees she still remembers his saying. Naruto smiles and gives Sabine her hug. That's right, no one hurts our precious people. After I lead the second group through we will leave and head to Jade and Fang's nest where I will activate Operation E. All right? He asks Geddon. A nod from Sabine before he leaves to tell Roland and Ian the news. Naruto gets back to the group and spots Ian and Roland who walk over to him. It's all set when the Ingen group reaches the edge of Raptor territory. I will signal the Raptors and they will attack, Naruto says, getting nods from Roland and Ian. After the Ingen group is wiped out I will signal again before leading all of you through safely, after which I will be staying behind to active Operation E. Naruto finishes explaining the plan. Naruto pulls out an envelope and hands it to Roland. Roland, after you reach the mainland please deliver that to Hammond for me, he says, getting a nod from Roland before he puts the envelope away in his vest pocket where it will be safe. Naruto smiles and notices the Ingen group getting up and heading out. Well, looks like it's show time, he says before getting into position as the Ingen group enters the Raptor territory and Naruto lets out a Raptor call to signal the attack. The following event can only be described as a massacre. The Ingen group was torn apart by the Velociraptors as Naruto watches and waits for it to end. Naruto stops hearing screams and leaves his post before walking back to his group and tells them to follow him to the edge of the Raptor territory where he gives another Raptor call before leading them through the territory to the compound and stops when they reach the compound. Naruto smiles at the group. Well, this is where we say goodbye, he says before each person in the group comes up to him and either hugs him or shakes his hand before they enter the compound and signal for a helicopter. Naruto walks back to see Sabine and the entire Velociraptor pack, which Naruto estimate to be around 200 to 500 strong, and smiles. Now how about be on our way, he says. Tting nods before he and the Raptors run towards Fang and Jade's nest at full speed. 2 hours later Naruto and the Raptors reach Fang and Jade's nest to see them waiting for him, causing him to smile. So what was the word from the others on the island, he asks them. Jade nods her head. Everyone has agreed to the plan and will follow you father, she says, getting a nod from Naruto. Naruto looks to sky and sees a helicopter leaving the island and smiles as it exits the island's airspace. Well, how about we go to our new home, he asks, getting nods from everyone. You ready in there, Kurumi? He asks. From within the mindscape Kurumi smiles and nods her head. We're all set in her, Naruto-kun. Just activate the seals and we will be in the summon realm, she answers back. Naruto smiles and slams his hand on the ground as he yells. Secret technique. Summon scroll creation, causing lines of seals to spread out from the place of impact and link up with the 4 seals placed at the 4 corners of the island as they form an outline of the island, and a white light covers the Who Island along with everything and everyone on it before they disappear. Meanwhile on the helicopter Roland and the others see the white light before the island disappears. Good luck Naruto, so long my friend, he says before looking at the envelope that Naruto gave him and smiles knowing that the people back in Naruto's home world better watch out cause the Maelstrom and his children are coming home. End chapter 3. Next chapter, return to Konaha, finals, and maybe invasion. Back home and finals begins. Chapter 4. And thank you everyone who viewed, review fav, and followed last chapter. Now to answer some reviews. Spark 681. No, Lex won't be in Naruto's harem. Sukoblu. Naruto won't keep his age because I want him to remain the same age as the other genin or it will throw off a lot of what I have planned. Zombie Executioner. I may have Naruto learn some kind of Dino Sage mode, but if I do it won't be until after the training trip. Rebmule. Maybe or maybe not. Shifty Eyes. Dragon Pony 022. Naruto will be 13 when he gets back to the elemental nations, but he will still mentally be in his early 20s. Tsunade is definitely a maybe for the harem. I just need to iron a few things before adding her. Now yes, the dinosaurs will be infused with chakra and gain abilities. Some will be revealed in this chapter while others will remain secret for now. Yugi, the godfather of games. No, I don't plan on that happening. Thor 94. Yes, the dinosaurs will learn jutsu like the other summons. As for the other thing, that is a good idea and might use it. Death Knight 999. Yes, I rushed through the movies due to wanting to get back to the elemental nations, and yes, things willing be slowing down pace-wise. Skian 6. Yes, the Spinoza. Eurus will make an appearance at some point. Lost Ship 45. Thank you for pointing that out, but I most likely will not pair Shiho with Naruto in this story, maybe in another one though. Killjoy 3000. Thank you. I have been trying to make the chapters longer. Yes, his age will revert, but it will be back to 13. However, his body will change to accommodate his increase in chakra, so he will have the appearance of a 15 to 16-year-old. Jaxiwi Jackson. Thank you for the review. Dino Bloodline. Yes, there will be pterodactyls and Spinosaurus, not sure about mosasaurs though. Draco Kong. The harem has 8 to 10 girls in it, and you should be able to tell some of the people in it by the hints I gave in Chapter 1. To everyone else who reviewed, thank you, and if I didn't answer your review, it was because I didn't want to. Oh, make a huge author note. Now on with the chapter. As the white light dies down, Naruto looks around, seeing that everyone is okay, and smiles. Kurumi-chan, did it work? He asks, wondering if they were in the summons realm. From within the seal, Kurumi closes her eyes for a second, sensing the area. It worked, Naruto-kun. We are in the summons realm, and our position is currently a few miles from the border of the Toad's territory, she answers. Naruto sighs in relief. Good, for a second there I thought it failed, he says, glad to hear that it worked. Suddenly there is a large poof of smoke, and when it CL ears, it reveals a huge red toad smoking a pipe. What's going on here? I was enjoying my dinner when suddenly I get word that an island appears out of nowhere on the edge of our territory, he bellows. Before looking down to see Naruto, and who the hell are you? He says. Naruto smiles at the large toad. I am Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, and I'm guessing that you're the boss of the toads, he says to the large toad, figuring that he must be the boss of the toad summons since he has the aura of a leader. The boss toad raises an eye hearing this. Wait, you're Naruto Uzumaki, our newest summoner? The toad asks, getting a nod from Naruto. Well, I am Gamabunta, the boss of the toads. Now will you tell me why the hell you are here and what the hell is going on? The now named Mabunta says, taking a drag of his piper before blowing out some smoke. Naruto smiles and nods. Well, it started when Jiraiya threw me off a cliff into a ravine to try and summon you using Kyuubi's chakra. After seeing how I was having trouble summoning anything bigger than a tadpole, he says, getting a nod from Gamabunta. However, that perverted idiot didn't even think that maybe someone had placed a Chakra disrupting seal on me before doing so, and as much as I tried I just couldn't summon you on the way down, he says, getting another nod from Gamabunta, who made a mental note to have Ma and Pa beat the shit out of Jiraiya. Naruto sees Gamabunta motion for him to continue. Well, as I continued to fall, I saw my life flash before my eyes, starting from my birth, and found out I was the son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Namikaze. I also found out that Kyuubi was forced to attack Konaha, that the Kyuubi is a girl, and that she saw my parents as her brother and sister, he says, shocking Gamabunta, who always thought there was something fishy about the Kyuubi suddenly breaking out of the seal on Kushina. Naruto continues his story. As my life continued to flash before my eyes, I saw the faces of my precious people. However, as my life finished flashing before my eyes, I saw a vision of them all gathered around my grave and crying, he says, getting another nod from Gamabunta. After seeing this, IONC again tried to summon you by pouring all the chakra I could into it, but messed up a hand sign and was flung into another dimension, he says, causing Gamabunta's eyes to widen and nearly drop his pipe. Naruto chuckles, seeing Gamabunta's reaction. I ended up in a world where technology is much more advanced than ours, and was found by a man whose dream was to make a theme park where people could see animals who were long since extinct, called dinosaurs, he says before gesturing to the dinosaurs behind him. Naruto continues his story. I decided to help the man whose name was John Hammond accomplish his dream while trying to find a way home, he says, getting a nod from Gamabunta. Naruto chuckles a little. It was at this time that I met the Kyuubi in my mindscape and learned about the events surrounding my birth and who my parents were. We also discussed various ways for me to get home and came upon the idea that if it was summoning that brought me there, it was summoning that would get me back. So we decided to create a summoning scroll, he says, causing Gamabunta's eyes to once again widen and nearly drop his pipe. Naruto smiles. After that I woke up and Hammond decided to give me a tour of the facility. As Hammond was giving me the tour we came to the incubation room where the dinosaur eggs were kept, and as I was looking at some of the eggs, 2 of them hatched and imprinted on me thinking I was their father, he says, gesturing to Fang and Jade, who lower their heads and nuzzle up against Naruto. After petting Fang and Jade, Naruto continues his story. I also discovered that due to the Kyuubi I had a mental connection with them and could communicate with them, and after Hammond found this out he made me a dinosaur handler, Naruto says with a smile. Naruto chuckles a little as he remembers the next part. For the next year I raised Fang and Jade while working on the summoning scroll, training, and after meeting my parents in my mindscape they taught me some of their skills and helped by giving input on the summoning scroll before their chakra ran out and they passed on, Naruto says with a small sad smile before he smiles happily. However, I also gained another child when Sabin hatched, he says as Sabine walks up and nuzzles against him as he pets her head. Gamabunta sees this and smiles as he can clearly tell that Naruto and his kids love each other very much, and it reminds him of his own son Gamakichi. Naruto finishes petting Sabine much to her displeasure and continues telling his tale. For the next 4 years I raised my kids while training and working on the Summon In contract, but there was an incident at the main island that resulted in all personnel having to evacuate, and after promising to return I had to leave, he says, getting another nod from Gamabunta as he takes another drag from his pipe. Naruto smiles a little. For the next 3 years I spent nearly all my time working on the summoning contract and perfecting the techniques my parents taught me until I received word from Hammond that he was assembling a team to go to the island and catalog the species of dinosaurs there to protect them, Naruto says, getting another nod from Gamabunta. Naruto notices Rexon walk up beside him, so he begins to pat the little Rex's head as he continues his story. After meeting the team we went to the island only to find out that the company Hammond owns had sent Anyo their team without him knowing to take the dinosaurs so they could be used in another park they were building in secret, and after we saw them capture some of the dinosaurs and lock them in cages I went and freed them, he says, narrowing his eyes as he remembers seeing the dinosaurs locked in cages. Rexon sees Naruto getting angry and nuzzles his head further into Naruto's palm, causing him to smile. As he calms down, after I freed the dinosaurs I heard a dinosaur crying out in pain and found Rexon here chained to the ground with a broken leg and immediately rushed over and freed him before rushing him back to our camp where we set the leg, he says with a smile as he remembers what happened next. It was then that Fang and Jade showed up, and after reuniting with them I found out that Rexon is my grandson, he says, nearly causing Gamabunta to choke on his pipe as he hears this. Naruto laughs seeing Gamabunta's reaction before continuing his story. After Fang, Jade, and Rexon left, the other Oops showed up and we had to team up to get off the island. However, I met with a friend that secretly worked with me when I was a dino handler who had been secretly hired by Hammond to keep an eye on He company's group, he says, recalling when he met Roland. Naruto continues to pet Rexon. We discussed a plan to deal with the Ingen group and I received word from the Kyuubi that the summoning contract was ready, so I sent 4 clones out to place a seal at the 4 corners of the island to transport it with the summon scroll, he says, impressing Gamabunta at how brilliant the plan was. Naruto smiles a little as he hears Rexon purr a little when he scratches a particular spot. I then came up with a plan to deal with the Ingen group, which involved leading them to Velociraptor territory where Sabine had become the leader of the Velociraptors, and after reuniting with Sabine I told her the plan before heading back, he says as Rexon walks back to his parents and Sabine walks back up to him. Naruto chuckles a little before he begins petting her again, much to her pleasure. I then lead the Ingen group to the Velociraptors territory where they were eliminated before heading back to my group and leading them safely through to the compound where we said our goodbyes and they left the island on a helicopter, he says, getting a nod from Gamabunta as he agrees with Naruto's actions towards the Ingen group. As Sabine snuggles her head further into Naruto's palm he continues his story. After my group left I lead the Sabine and the other raptors to Fang and Jade's nest and they told me the other dinosaurs agreed to follow me and I activated the seals and summoning contract and we ended up here, he says, finishing his story. Gamabunta thinks for a minute, processing everything he was just told before coming to a decision. Naruto, you sure are one interesting person, he says with a deep chuckle. I admire everything you have done to protect not only your children but the dinosaurs as a whole. He says, getting a nod from Naruto. It is because of that and the fact that you were the one to create the Dino summoning scroll that I'm allowing you to remain our summoner, he says, surprising Naruto. Also, the toads will always have the dinosaurs' backs, and after I tell the slugs your story I'm sure they will too, he says with a grin. Naruto smiles hearing this. Thank you, Gamabunta-sama, he says, bowing to the boss of the toads. Gamabunta sees this and chuckles. No need for formalities, Naruto, just call me Gamabunta or Chief, he says with a smirk. Also, at some point in the near future you and me are going to share some sake to celebrate you becoming one of our summoners, the boss of the toads says with a smirk. Naruto laughs. You got it, Chief. How does after the Chunin exams sound? He says, looking forward to drinking the toad boss under the table, seeing how he can't get drunk due to Kurumi. Gamabunta nods before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto turns to Sabine, Fang, and Jaden. Smiles. Well, I better get going, but don't worry, I will summon all of you soon, he says before petting each of them one more time and disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto opens his eyes to see himself still falling in the ravine. Oh, come on. He yells, finding it ridiculous that of all the places to appear it is right where he was before he entered the Jurassic Park universe. Naruto sighs before going the some hand signs and yelling, Kuchio's no jutsu. Pterodactyl. A cloud of smoke appears, and when it clears, Naruto is being held in the claws of a large pterodactyl as it uses its wings to hover. The pterodactyl has a long pointed beak and a medium-sized crest on its head, thin leathery wings with 3 small claws halfway down them that allow the pterodactyl to fold its wings and walk on its claws. Naruto looks up at the pterodactyl and smiles. Hey Arrow, it's been a while, thanks for the save, he says, happy to see the pterodactyl again, as the last time he saw her was when he had to do a quick checkup on her. Arrow glances down and her eyes widen slightly before she lets out a happy-sounding squawk. Naruto smiles. It's good to see you two. Think you can give me a lift back up to the top of the ravine? He asks, getting another squawk before she flaps her wings and they soar into the air. Jiraiya was getting nervous. He had pushed Naruto into the ravine to force him to use the Kyuubi's chakra to summon Gamabunta. But as time passed, there was still not sign of Naruto or the boss toad. Jiraiya was just about to rush back to the Sandaime and tell him the news when a blur shoots out of the ravine and soars into the air. As Jiraiya finally gets a good look at the blur, his jaw hits the ground when he sees Naruto in the claws of some kind of strange bird-like creature with leathery wings similar to a bat's. Jiraiya watches as the creature and Naruto land in front of him before Naruto rubs the creature's head and it disappears in a cloud of smoke. Snapping out of his shock, Jiraiya clears his throat. Naruto, what the hell was that? He yells, wondering what the hell just happened. Naruto looks at Jiraiya and tilts his head to the side. That was Arrow. She is a pterodactyl and one of my summons, he says casually, like he was talking about the weather. Jiraiya just nods his head. Okay, so it was one of your summons. That explains it, he says before a tick mark forms on his forehead. What the hell do you mean one of your summons? He yells. Getting fed up with Naruto beats around the bush. Naruto laughs. Well, when you chucked me off the cliff and I was falling, I couldn't summon Gamabunta and my life flashed before my eyes from my birth up to then, he says, narrowing his eyes, causing Jiraiya to pale hearing this. Naruto then vanishes before reappearing in front of Jiraiya and kicking him as hard as he could in the nuts, causing to Jiraiya to let out a girly scream that could be heard all across the elemental nations. In a random casino somewhere in Fire Country. A busty blonde wearing a green haori with the kanji for gamble on the back was sitting at a slot machine next to a black-haired girl in a black kimono who was holding a small pig wearing a jacket. Hears the scream and Miles. I don't know who it was that made Jiraiya scream like that, but I feel like giving them a passionate kiss for making the pervert scream that loud, she says with a smirk as she licks her lips, getting a nod from the black-haired girl beside her. Back with Naruto and the now less of a man Jiraiya. Naruto stood over the crying form of Jiraiya, who was holding what remained of his manhood after Naruto shattered of his nuts with that kick, and smiles. For some reason I have the feeling that things are going to get very pleasant soon, he says before looking down at Jiraiya. 30 minutes later, the Now recovered Jiraiya was shakily standing and glaring at Naruto. What the hell was that for? You just shattered one of my nuts. He yells in rage. Naruto smirks sadistically. That was for throwing me the cliff without even thinking that maybe there was a reason I was having trouble with summoning, like I don't know, maybe someone put a seal on me that disrupts my chakra or something, he yells. You should be glad that my mother isn't alive, because when she found out what you did she was furious, or that I don't drag you into my mindscape and have Kurumi-chan beat you to near death before destroying your soul, he yells at the pervy sage. Jiraiya pales as the thought of an angry Kushina appears in his mind before what Naruto just said fully registers. Wait, who's Kurumi-chan? He asks, fearing the answer. Naruto smiles creepily. Why, she is the Kyuubi, of course, and she is also one of my girlfriends, he says nonchalantly. Jiraiya pales hearing this. Okay, you have some explaining to do, he says, wanting an explanation. Naruto chuckles. Well, after my life flashed before my eyes, I saw a vision of all my precious people crying over my grave and swore to not make them cry, he says, getting a nod from Jiraiya. So I pushed as much chakra as I could and tried summoning again, but made a mistake in the hand signs and wound up in another dimension, he says, causing Jiraiya's eyes to widen. Naruto then goes on to tell of his time in the Jurassic Park universe, as he had named it, from Hammond finding him, meeting the Kyuubi and his parents, creating the Dino summon scroll, along with everything else. By the end of it, Jiraiya's jaw is on the ground as he processes everything Naruto just told him, from the fact that he was in another dimension and the fact he spent 10 years there while no time had passed here. Was taught by the Charka ghosts of his parents, has full control of the Kyuubi's chakra and is actually dating her, and creating a summons contract. Jiraiya just stares at Naruto stupefied for a moment until he hears Naruto cuckle. Hey pervy sage, want to meet my kids and grandson? He asks, smirking inwardly as he pictures Jiraiya's reaction. Jiraiya nods dumbly and Naruto smirks. Before going through the necessary hand signs before yelling, Kuchio's no jutsu, Maelstrom's kids, and 4 clouds of smoke appear behind him. As the smoke clears, Jiraiya gets his first look at Naruto's kids, and nearly faints seeing 2 large dinosaurs, as Naruto had called them, along with a smaller version of the 2, and one that looks positively vicious with the large claw on each of its feet. Naruto smiles. Jiraiya, allow me to introduce my children Jade, Fang, and Sabine, he says, gesturing to Fang, Jade, and Sabine, and my grandson Rexon, he says, gesturing to Rexon. The 4 dinosaurs nuzzle up against Naruto as he smiles and pets them one by one before looking to the terrified form of Jiraiya and grinning as best they could, which causes Jiraiya to pale even more seeing their teeth. Jiraiya just nods dumbly before Naruto bids Fang, Jade, Rexon, and Sabine goodbye for now, and they return to the summon realm. Naruto turns to Jiraiya and smiles. Now let's get to training. I have a month to get used to my younger body again before I kick Neji's ass for nearly killing Hinata-chan, he says with narrowed eyes, remembering how Neji nearly killed one of his secret girlfriends. Jiraiya's eyes turn serious as he snaps out of his shock and nods his head. For the rest of the month Naruto trained to get used to his younger body, however Kurumi informed him that his body would be receiving a large growth spurt in order to accommodate the excess chakra he came back with. In the night after it was done, Naruto awoke to find himself looking like he was 15 to 16 years old while still 13 years old. Naruto had also met with the Sandaime, and after telling him what had happened and that he knew about his parents, the Sandaime begged Naruto to forgive him, which Naruto did, but not before kicking the sand Amy in the nuts like he had with Jiraiya, but not nearly as strong, but still strong enough for the aged Hokage to let out a very loud girlish scream. Naruto had also introduced the Sandaime to Fang, Jade, Sabine, and Rexon, and after the Sandaime nearly had a heart attack upon seeing them, Naruto told them they Fang, Jade, and Sabine were his kids, which made them the Sandaime's surrogate great-grandchildren. And Rexon, who was Naruto's grandson, making him the Hokage's surrogate great-great-grandson. The Sandaime chuckled at this before petting each of them after Naruto told them that the Hokage is their surrogate great-grandfather. Naruto then told the Hokage that while he was in the other dimension he had some spare time to think about what had happened during the second portion of the And how he believed that Orochimaru would likely strike during the finals and try to kill the Sandaime and attack the village, which after thinking about it for a few minutes the Sandaime realized he had it would be just like his former student to do something like that and agreed with Naruto. The two then brainstormed some ideas on how to deal with the situation and came up with a plan. After meeting with the Sandaime, Naruto had gone to the hospital to check on Hinata and the two talked and Naruto told her he had a surprise for her when the finals started and kissed her forehead before leaving. Naruto had also met with Anko and told her about what had happened, and after hearing that Jiraiya had thrown him off a cliff she would have stormed off to kill the perverted sage if Naruto hadn't told her that he already dealt with it by kicking him in the nuts so hard it pulverized one of the Sannin's nuts to powder. Anko ended up rolling on the forest floor hearing this for a while before Naruto told her he had a surprise for her during the finals and to place a huge bet that he would beat Neji. Naruto spent the rest of the month training and found out that due to becoming summon animals the dinosaurs were infused with chakra that allowed them to use some Justu like the toads, and gained special abilities that were unique to each species. After finding this out he spent the rest of the month working with each species helping them discover what their abilities were and how to use them. The month-long break before the Chunin exam finals had ended and the majority of the village along WITH visiting dignitaries were currently in the stand of the Chunin exam arena waiting patiently for the matches to start. Down in the arena the genin who were to fight were all gathered except for two, those being Naruto and Sasuke. The Hokage was in the cage booth and had just welcomed the cage whose face was hidden by a veil when he spots someone else walking up. The person was an incredibly beautiful woman with. The woman smiles at the Hokage. "Greetings Hokage Dono, I am Mei Kurumi the god, I'm Mizukage," she says, her voice sounding like that of angels. The Hokage smiles. "Greetings Mizukage. Dono, I wasn't expecting you to be here and congratulations on freeing Kiri from Yagura's rule," he says in his political voice. Mei smiles. "I came to see the one named Naruto Uzumaki fight after on. Of the genin teams came back saying there was an Uzumaki in the exams, and thank you, it was a long battle but Kiri is finally free," she says before they both take their seats next to the cage, who silently curses the Mizukage showing up. Mei looks to the arena floor and frowns slightly. "Hokage Dono, it appears that Naruto Uzumaki isn't here yet," she says. The Sandaime chuckles slightly. "No. Naruto, he is going to make a big badass entrance that will be remembered for years to come," he says with a smile and causing Mei to giggle a little. Hiruzen then looks to the arena floor and gives the signal for the exams to start. Down on the arena floor Genma sees the Hokage's signal and clears his throat. "We will now begin the third exam of the Chunin exams. Will everyone except for Neji Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki please leave the arena floor," he says as everyone except for Neji leaves the arena floor. Up in the stand the Jonin sensei, Anko, along with the clan heads and those of the Kai 12 who didn't make it to the third exam are watching and waiting. Hiba sees Naruto isn't here yet. "Where the heck is Naruto? If he doesn't show up soon he will be disqualified," he says, getting nods from the other genin. Sakura just huffs. "Who cares where the baka is? Sasuke-kun will beat everyone and win the tournament anyway," she says, causing the other genin to just stare at her before shaking their heads. The Jonin senseis just stare at her before shaking their heads and Anko chuckles, getting their attention. Knowing Naruto-kun, he is going to make a badass entrance that will be remembered for years, isn't that right Hinata? She says, causing everyone to look at her and then at Hinata, wondering what the relationship between the three of them is. Back in the arena Genin looks around. "If Naruto Uzumaki doesn't show up in 30 seconds he will be," he says before stopping when the arena doors fly open. The doors fly open and smoke billows out before 24 velociraptors walk out in two single file lines before stopping and facing each other before bowing their heads. Suddenly the sound of loud footsteps or head that shake the arena as a figure walks out with a pair of T-Rex on either side of him. The figure is wearing a white trench coat that goes down to his mid-calf. The words, "Dino Sage," in gold lettering above a skeleton-like symbol Jurassic Park logo asterisk, and has red flam S on the bottom over a fishnet mesh shirt that shows of his chiseled chest. He is also wearing a pair of crimson cargo pant on and black steel-toed combat boots. On his hands are a pair of black her fingerless gloves, and he has a pair of black sunglasses on. The figure has blonde spiky hair with 2 bangs that frame his face and 6 whisker marks on his cheeks with 3 on each cheek. More than a few of the women in the stand blush upon seeing the man's chiseled chest and handsome face. Jinam clears his throat. Who are you? He asks, having an idea of who the man standing before him is, because there is only one person who could make such a badass entrance. The man smiles before removing his sunglasses, showing his brilliant blue eyes. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze and his wife Kushina Uzumaki. He yells with his arm raised as he points to the sky, and explosions go off behind him as Fang and Jade roar to the sky. Everyone is speechless by Naruto's proclamation before they hear the Hokage laughing and turn to look at the cage booth as the Hokage gets up and walks over to the railing. So you finally decided to drop the mask, Naruto, he says, causing many of the people in the stand's eyes to widen. The Sandaime clears his throat and pulls out a slip of paper. I hold in my hand a copy of Naruto Uzumaki's birth certificate. He is the son of Minatao Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, as he claims to be. When he was born, I hid his heritage so that his parents' enemies would not try to kill him for revenge. He yells, causing nearly everyone's jaws to drop to the floor as the Hokage takes his seat again. Mei turns to the Sandaime and glares. Hokage Dono, I would like to know why my fiancé is indeed alive and well when I was told by one of your NBU that he had died the night of the Kyuubi attack with his parents, she says dangerously. Hiruzen's eyes widen hearing this. What do you mean they told you he died? I told them to tell you that he was alive, but that his identity must be kept secret until he could defend himself from his parents' enemies, he says before his eyes narrow in realization. Mizukage Dono, what did the Anbu look like? He says, fearing the answer. Mei stares at the Hokage. He had a black cloak on and was wearing a blank mask with the kanji for root on it, and spoke in an emotionless voice. Why? She asks, wondering what difference it makes. Hiruzen slams his fist down on his chair's armrest, cracking it slightly. Damn that Danzo, he yells before turning to look at Mei. Mizukage Dono, the Anbu you described was a part of a group that I had ordered be dissolved, which means the person in charge of the group has disobeyed my order and committed treason, he says, causing Mei's eyes to widen slightly before they turn their attention back to the arena floor. In the stand with the Jonin senseis, Enko and the Rookie 12, the majority of them have their jaws hanging open before Enko starts laugh, getting their attention. I told you he would make a badass entrance. I expect nothing less from our man, isn't that right, Hinata-chan? She says, causing everyone's jaws to hit the floor and stare between the two. Hinata starts ahing. You got that right, Enko-chan, she says with a smile before she stretches. Ah, it feels so good to finally drop my mask of shy and timidness and be able to be with our man in the open, right, Enko-chan, she says, getting a nod from Enko and causing everyone's eyes to nearly pop out of their heads. Tenten is the first to recover. Wait, you mean that the Hinata that we all know is nothing more than a mask you created, and that both you and Enko are going out with Naruto? She says, trying to understand everything she just heard. Hinata just smiles before nodding, and Enko bursts out laughing. That's not all, buns. Naruto is also seeing Sum and Hana in Izuka, she says, once again causing everyone's jaws to hit the ground and Asuma to drop his cigarette. Kiba hears this and nearly has a heart attack. What? He yells, not believing that not his sister but also his mother are seeing Naruto. Suddenly they all hear Sum and Hana yell, yeah, you tell Apex Sama, and upon hearing this Kiba promptly faints. Back in the arena floor, Naruto hears this and chuckles before dismissing Fang, Jade and the Velociraptors before they disappear in a cloud of smoke. Naruto cracks his neck before turning to Jay. NMA, hey, you think we can get started? I have a stuck-up fate-obsessed girly boy's ass to kick before I remove the stick that is shoved up his ass, he yells loud enough for everyone to hear, causing Eni to laugh and Neji's eye to twitch angrily. Genma tries to stifle his own laughter before clearing his throat. The first match of the finals between Neji Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze will know. Begin, he says, stressing Naruto's other last name while smirking. Ready, fight, he yells before jumping out of the way. End Chapter 4. Finals and Invasion begins. Chapter 5. And thank you everyone who viewed, followed, And especially reviewed last chapter, as I got 47 reviews for the last chapter, which is the second highest I have ever gotten, so once again thank you. Now to answer a few reviews. Martinez 9. Large dinosaurs like T-Rex and Spinosaurus are smaller than boss summons but will have the ability to change their size due to being summon animals. However, dinosaurs like Apatosaurus and Brachiosaurus are larger than boss summons. GameLover 41592. No, there isn't Sakura bashing per se. There will be times when it seems like I am bashing her, but it won't be a constant thing. Suko Blue. The reason behind why Soom and Hana are in the harem will be revealed soon, and I will not be removing Soom for someone else as I already have the harem planned out and locked. Shadow Tones. Yes, each chapter was a little rushed, but I wanted to get to the start of the finals quickly. The backstory behind Naruto and his girls will be revealed soon, so don't worry. Thor 94. No, Naruto will not be using modern tech like computers and spy drones which weren't even around during the Jurassic Park timeline. However, I may have him try and modify a jeep or maybe a dirt bike to run on chakra and use that occasionally. Haven't decided yet. But you have to remember that all of the on the island has been left to the elements for 3 years and likely damaged due to the dinosaurs. Death Knight 999. In Riga. RDS to Hinata dropping her mask. She will be a blend of her RTN personality and her canon personality. She will still have moments where she is the shy, timid, blushing Hinata from canon, but those will mainly be when she is with Naruto. Her RTN personality side will be when she is in fights around her friends and situations like that. Misery Wolf. You were correct about Hinata, Anko, Soom, Hana, and Mei, wrong about Haku. And I will not confirm nor deny Karen. Cody James. It will probably be soon, but we'll have to see how things go. Now, before I start the chapter, I would like to point out one thing. I received a review, flame, from someone, not going to say who, and this person decided to just tear into my entire story about the things he didn't like before letting me know he will not be reading anymore. Now I just have to say, if you don't like the story, why bother writing a flame about all the things you don't like before saying you're done reading it, instead of just dropping it and not flaming me. I also have a new poll up on my profile, so please vote anyway. Here is the next chapter, hope you like it. As Genma jumps up away, Naruto and Neji just stare at each other waiting for the other to make the first move. Naruto cracks his neck before smirking at Neji. So you ready to get your ass handed to you, pole ass, he taunts. Neji glares at Naruto before activating his Byakugan and charging at Naruto. He throws a rapid series of jabs at Naruto's torso only for Naruto to dodge around them without even trying. Seeing that his attacks aren't making contact, Neji tries to go for a rapid ease of strikes to Naruto's arms and legs to immobilize him only for Naruto to once again dodge. For the next 10 minutes this pattern keeps up, with Neji trying to hit Naruto only to miss every time, causing him to get angrier as time passes. Naruto, having enough of dodging, grabs Neji's extended arm and delivers a brutal kick to his ribs, causing him to fly back into the arena wall. The crowd is stunned by how easily Naruto is dealing with Neji. As Neji pulls himself out the arena wall, Naruto chuckles. You know, Neji, you are so proud of your bloodline that you think you are superior to everyone else. Especially those who don't have them, he says. Naruto then smirks. Well, guess what, Neji, you're not the only one with a bloodline, he says, shocking the crowd and Neji. Naruto then extends both his arms as a bright light covers both his hands. When the light dies down, Naruto is holding what looks like 2 large keys. The one his left hand is all gold and has 3 teeth-like points at the end, similar to the top of a crown. And connected to the grip is what appears to be a chain with a medium-sized circle with 2 small circles above it, much like Ears Mickey's kingdom key. The other is same shape as the other, but it has a silver blade and gold grip, Sora's kingdom key. Everyone stares at the 2 keys in a mixture of confusion except for the Mizukage and the Hokage. Neji just FFS, seeing what Naruto is holding. That's your bloodline. You can summon 2 toy keys. He laughs at the uselessness of it. Naruto starts laughing. Oh, these aren't just any keys, Neji, he says before smirking. They are keyblades, he says. Neji just raises an eyebrow. Oh, and what's so special about those keyblades, he asks, wondering what's so special about them. Naruto smiles. Well, Neji, to find out what's so special about them, you first need a history lesson, he says. The story starts during the time of the Sage of Six Paths. When he was on his deathbed he called for his 3 children and gave each of them a gift. To his oldest he gave his eyes, which lead to the birth of the Byakugan and later the Sharingan, when a Hyuga clan begged the Kyuubi to change his eyes so that he could leave the family, which was the beginning of the Uchiha clan. To his second son he gifted his body, which led to the birth of the Senju clan. However, it is the youngest son that things get interesting. For the youngest son was incredibly kind-hearted and cared for everyone much like his father. So when the sage asked what he wanted, the youngest told him that he merely wanted to protect everyone much like his father. The sage, hearing this, knew right then what to gift him with: his heart. Naruto says. Everyone in the stadium is on the edge of their seats as Naruto continues his story. Upon receiving the sage's heart, a bright light appeared in the youngest son's hand and took the form of a large sword that resembled a key, Naruto says, causing everyone's eyes to widen. After some time the youngest discovered that the sword, which he had named the Keyblade, had the power to unlock anything, even a person's heart. By unlocking a person's heart, it released the darkness within, and said darkness broke off from the person and took a shape of its own. The sun came to call this darkness the Heartless, due to there being a hole where their heart would be. The sun would then fight the Heartless, and upon defeating it, the person whose heart he unlocked would be filled with light, he says. Naruto then chuckles. Now you're probably wondering what's so special about being filled with light, he asks G. Getting a nod from Neji. Well, think of the darkness in one's heart as a cancer that slowly eats away at the person, especially if they are filled with hate or other dark emotions. Eventually this darkness would completely fill the person's heart and overtake them, turning them into a psychotic mass murderer or something just as vile. However, by purifying the darkness within the person's heart, it led the person's heart and made them peaceful. Naruto then turns serious again, so the youngest son went around purifying people's hearts. However, there were times when the darkness in a person's heart was so great he had no choice but to kill them and forever seal away their hearts, effectively preventing the person from ever being reincarnated. Over time the son fell in love and started a family which later became the Uzumaki clan. Upon hearing this, everyone who hadn't already figured out that the youngest son was the founder of the Uzumaki clan had their mouths wide open. Naruto chuckles. Now as time passed and the clan grew, they discovered that the chances of inheriting their clan's founder ability to wield the Keyblade were only about 1 in 500,000 Uzumaki. However, there were instances when someone did inherit it that they would be able to wield not 1 but 2 Keyblades. However, these instances were very rare, around 1 in a million for those who were able to wield a single one. The clan decided that those who were able to wield 2 Keyblades would take up leadership of the clan and also carry the duties of the clan's founder and defend the world from darkness, and were called Keyblade Masters. This was because the only time someone would be gifted with the ability to wield 2 Keyblades was whenever there was a great darkness in the near future. Think of it as an early warning system, and those who wielded it would lead the world to fight against whatever the darkness may be. Everyone in the stands has their jaws on the floor hearing this before the older shinobi suddenly realize that something big is going to happen in the near future and that Naruto is their only hope of overcoming it. Naruto smiles. Now that you know what's so special about the Keyblade and can clearly see I am one of the very few Uzumaki that can wield 2, how about I show you a little bit of what they can do, Naruto says before the Keyblades start glowing. The Keyblade in Naruto's left hand glows an eerie black before the light dies down, revealing that it has changed shape. The Keyblade is now a silvery black color, and at the end of the blade is an ornate crown-like shape. The Gua road is changed to bat-like wings that bend back towards the chain at the end of the grip, and at the end of the chain is a black 3-pointed crown Oblivion Keyblade. The Keyblade in Naruto's other hand glows in a blinding white light, and when it fades like the Keyblade in his other hand, it too has changed. The Keyblade is now a white-silver color and has 2 blades that connect at the end and form a gold and blue flower-like star. The guard has changed to angel-like wings that bend towards the chain at the end of the grip, and at the end of the chain is a yellow-orange colored start with a SMA. lavender tuft of hair at the top point. Oathkeeper Keyblade. Naruto smiles and hold them up for Neji to see. Allow me to introduce the Oblivion Keyblade and the Oathkeeper Keyblade, he says, gesturing to each as he introduces them. Naruto smirks. I gained Oathkeeper when I promised to beat your ass for injuring Hinata-chan. Oblivion on the other hand I gained when I purified my own heart of a the darkness within it that came into existence due to the hatred I felt for everything the villagers did to me when I was younger, he says. Naruto chuckles. Now here is the really interesting thing. These two keyblades were the personal ones used by the founder of the Uzumaki clan and Eno Uzumaki since him has ever been granted either one. However I can use both, just like he did, he says smirking at the end. By this point Neji is shaking a little in fear after hearing everything Naruto has just said and gulps loudly. Up in the cage's booth the Sandaime smiles, to think that Naruto is able to use the legendary bloodline of the Uzumaki clan and the two-bladed version no less. He is destined for greatness just like his parents foresaw, the Sandaime says. The Mizukage just nods. Agreed. I remember hearing the stories about the legendary Keyblade masters from my father when I was a child. Kushina was also one of the few Uzumaki able to wield the Keyblade but only a single one at that. However, she kept it hidden and secret by disguising it as her katana, the Mizukage says remembering her late childhood friend. Mei smiles. When she found out she was pregnant she told me that her Keyblade started to glow from time to time whenever it was near her womb, almost like it was waiting for her child to be born, Mei finishes. The Hokage looks to Mei. You mean like it had chosen its next wielder? He asks curiously. Mei shakes her head. No, it is impossible for a Keyblade to change wielders, because when its wielder dies the Keyblade disappears. The only reason it would glow like that is if the next Keyblade master was going to be born or was born. The Sandaime thinks for a minute on what he was just told and realizes something. Wait, then that means since Naruto can wield Oblivion and Oathkeeper, he begins when the Mizukage interrupts him. That Naruto is the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths' youngest son on top of the next Keyblade Master, she finishes, causing the Sandaime's eyes to widen before they turn their attention back to the arena floor. Back in the arena floor Naruto smiles. Ready or not Neji, here I come, he says before rocketing towards Neji and delivering a series of rapid slashes. Neji only manages to evade or deflect a few of them before he is overwhelmed and gets hit on his arms and chest, leaving a couple of thin gashes before he jumps back to get out of Naruto's range. Naruto sees Neji trying to keep him at a distance and chuckles. Very clever Neji, however I am not limited to close range with my Keyblades, he says before pointing Oblivion at Neji and saying fire. A medium-sized ball of fire around the size of a watermelon flies out of the tip and heads at Neji, surprising him for a second before he manages to barely dodge the fireball, but manages to singe of a decent amount of his hair. Naruto smirks before point Oathkeeper at Neji and saying blizzard, causing a medium-sized spike of ice to appear right below Neji, which he barely dodges. This pattern repeats a few times with Naruto saying various spells like water and thunder along with fire and blizzard. After a few minutes Naruto stops for a second, allowing Neji to catch his breath. For a second. Well, how about we end this Neji, he says before running towards Neji and saying, Sonic Blade. Naruto then dashes back and forth too fast for Neji to follow or react, delivering a IOUS of slashes all over Neji's body before stopping behind him. Neji falls to the ground and appears to be defeated, but right as Genma is about to call the match he gets back up and glares at Naruto. I will not be defeated. You are fated to lose here just like Hinata was fated to lose against me because she is weak, he says before trying to run at Naruto only to find himself unable to move. Naruto turns to Neji and sighs. I was hoping I could snap you out of your fate complex by simply beating you, but it appears that I am going to have to do this the hard way, he says before he starts to walk towards Neji. Neji tries to move but can't until he looks at his feet and notices what look like chains coming out of the ground and wrapped around his ankles, preventing him from even using his trump, the Kaden. Naruto sees Neji notice the chains and chuckles. I see you have noticed my other bloodline chakra chains which I inherited from my mother, he says, surprising everyone that Naruto has two bloodlines. Naruto finishes walking towards Neji and stand behind him. I didn't want to use this just you Neji, but you have forced my hand, forbidden Uzumaki style. Pull up the ass removal jutsu, he saw. Before placing his hands near Neji's ass as a large pole of light appears and he begins pulling it out of Neji's ass, causing him to scream in pain. Everyone in the stand has their jaws on the ground. D at the ridiculous just you as Naruto removes a pole from Neji's ass. As Naruto finishes pulling out the pole and tosses it to the side and Neji passes out and falls to the ground. Naruto turns to Liu K at Genma whose Senbon stick that he was chewing on has fallen to the ground and clears his throat. Well, are you going to call the match? He asks. Genma snaps out of his stupor and clears his throat. Winner Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, he says, and a few moments later the crowd snaps out their stupor and begin to cheer. Genma looks at Naruto. What was that, just you? He asks. Naruto chuckles. It's just as its name implies. I remove the stick that was stuck up someone's ass, however it only works on people who are really arrogant, or think they are better than everyone else. Also, before you ask, I won't use it on Sasuke for a few reasons. The first being I don't want my hands anywhere near his ass, and the second being that he would probably enjoy it too much, he says loud enough forever. Young to hear, causing many to laugh at the innuendo. Genma laughs as medics come and take Neji away to treat his injuries and Naruto leaves the field to rejoin the other competitors. Seeing the arena Lear, Genma decides to get the next match underway, while Sasuke, Uchiha and Gaara of Sand come to the arena, he says as Gaara enters the arena. 5 minutes go by and Sasuke still hasn't shown up, so the Hokage declares him disqualified, much to the ire of the Cage. Genma then calls Shino and Kankuro to the arena, but Kankuro forfeits, much to the crowd's disapproval. Next, Genma calls Shikamaru and Tamari to the arena floor and Tamari enters the arena. Shikamaru just sighs. Troublesome, I should just forfeit, he says before a chill run down his spine, and he turns to see Naruto smiling creepily behind him. As Naruto smiles, a Hanya mask appears next to him and leaks blood out of its eyes. Shikamaru, you better get out there and fight, or I will use the pole up the ass removal just on you, but in reverse, he says calmly, causing Shikamaru to turn paler than a ghost and run into the arena so fast you would swear he teleported. All of the competitors near Naruto shiver and are speechless. Bef. Or Shino manages to find his voice. Naruto-san, can you put away the Hanya mask please? He asks, getting nods from everyone else. Naruto looks at Shino and raises his sleeve to cover his mouth. Fufu. Fufu, I have no idea what you're talking about, Shino, he says calmly, sending another shiver down their spines before the mask disappears, much to everyone's relief. Kankuro, who is shaking, says, that was the scariest thing I have ever seen, he says, getting a nod from everyone. Gaara shivers and says, he scared mother, causing Kankuro to pale in fear of Naruto, who was able to scare a bloodthirsty psychotic Biju. Naruto hearing this chuckles and thinks, Kami, that was fun. I am sure glad I read that manga where I got the idea from. What was it called? Seke. No wait, it was called Sekire, that's right. Now that I think about it, did I remember to seal up all my manga before I left the Jurassic Park universe? He wonders, making a mental note to check if he did. Naruto turns his attention back to the arena just in time to see Shikamaru forfeit. Genma then calls for him and Gaara to enter the arena, which they do and are about to start when two people appear between them in a cloud of smoke. The smoke clears to reveal Kakashi and Sasuke. Yo, are we late? Kakashi asks with his signature I smile. Genma just sighs. Yes, you are very late and Sasuke has been disqualified for not showing up on time, he says, causing Kakashi to shrug. Sasuke's furious hearing this. You can't disqualify me, I am an Uchiha, we are the elite and all of you should bow before me, he yells in rage before seeing Naruto. Dobi, I demand you give me your spot, he yells, causing many in the stands to have WTF expressions on their faces. Naruto just cleans his ear with his pinky before flicking away some dust and looking over to Sasuke with a bored expression. You say something, he asks, causing everyone in the stands to sweat drop before bursting out in laughter, while Maida Guy yells about Kakashi's hip cool attitude infecting Naruto, before he is whacked upside the head by Asuma, who was standing the closest to him. Sasuke seethes before pulling out a kunai and charging at Naruto. I will kill you, Dobi. Nobody disrespects me, he yells, crazily. Naruto just stands there before Oblivion and Oathkeeper appear in his hands, and he points Oblivion at Sasuke and says, stop, causing Sasuke to stop in his tracks, unable to move. Naruto suddenly vanishes only to appear right behind Sasuke with both his keyblades in a scissor position at Sasuke's neck ready to decapitate him at the slightest movement. Naruto smiles sadistically and his voice takes on a deathly tone. Foolish little Uchiha, your power is nothing compared to mine. It would be like comparing an ant to one of the Biju. Why your Itachi ni Aizen left you alive instead of someone that deserved it like your lovely and caring mother is beyond me, but know this. If you try anything like this again, I will rip out those eyes you seem so proud of. And feed them to you before cutting you in half from head to toe. Do I make myself clear? He says, sending shivers down everyone's spines. Sasuke meanwhile is frozen and pissing his pants at the sheer amount of power that Naruto is expelling and can only grit his teeth in fury before nodding reluctantly. Naruto then looks up to the cage's booth. Hokage-sama, I will be pressing charges against Sasuke Uchiha for the attempted murder of a fellow Konaha shinobi, the heir of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, and clan head of said clans, he says, narrowing his eyes. Sasuke gulps hearing this, knowing well what the consequences of such a crime would be before what Naruto just said. Yeah right, Dobi, you're just some clan-less loser orphan whose parents probably killed themselves out of shame for spawning someone as weak as you. He taunts arrogantly. Suddenly a massive pressure descends on the stadium, instantly knocking the civilians out while the majority of the shinobi are on their knees gasping for breath. Naruto turns his attention back to Sasuke, giving him a full view of his eyes which have a golden fire burning in them. Poor deluded Uchiha runt, do I need to clean out your ears with a kunai? I am the son of the Yondaime. Hokage Minato Namikaze, also known as the Yellow Flash, the only man to ever be labeled as an SS rank threat with a flea on sight order in the bingo book, and his wife. Kushina Uzumaki, the princess of Uzushisho, or the village hidden in the whirlpools, and the Red Death of Konaha. That means not only am I the son of the village's greatest Hokage since the Shodaime, but also a prince and heir to an entire nation. He yells in rage. Naruto then looks at the cage's booth again and sends a withering glare. Hokage-sama, may I teach this filth his place and to not badmouth his fellow shinobi? He says in a tone that promises pain. The Sandaime thinks for a few moments before standing up and walking the railing. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, I grant you permission to humble him as long as you don't kill or cripple him, he declares with a hidden smirk. Naruto smiles sadistically. Understood, he says before turning his attention. Gaara-san, would it be right with you if we hold off our fight for a few minutes while I deal with this trash? He asks with a sickly sweet smile. Gaara cracks the tiniest of smiles hearing this. Not at all, Uzumaki-san, After all, it is the duty of all shinobi to take out the trash everyone once in a while, he says before returning to the competitor's booth. Naruto then turns his attention to Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei, I would step back if I were you. And if you even think of interfering, I will burn all of your Ika and replace it yaoi gay porn and pictures of Guy-sensei and Lee in Speedos hugging, before I burn very copy of Ika within a 25-mile radius, he says with a sickly sweet smile as a Hanya mask with bleeding eyes and snakes coming out of its mouth appears over his shoulder. Kakashi goes so pale that he is nearly see-through and nods his so fast it nearly breaks the sound barrier before leaving the so fast he appears to teleport to the stands. Everyone in the stands also pales as they imagine Guy and Lee in Speedos hugging before many of them throw up at the disgusting image. Naruto looks back to Sasuke and smirks before kicking him to the other side of the arena floor and smirks. Ready or not, Uchiha, here I come, he says before rocketing towards Sasuke so fast they not even the Jonin watching from the stands can track him. Sasuke tries to track Naruto with his Sharingan but to his horror can't. As Naruto reaches Sasuke, he swings his keyblades in a horizontal slash, slicing into Sasuke's chest before flipping over him and diagonally across his back. As Naruto lands, he dashes forward and delivers a series of quick slashes to Sasuke's ankle, severing his Achilles tendon. Sasuke falls to his knees unable to stand as Naruto lands in front of him and slashes his shoulders, preventing him from using his arms. Naruto looks down at the kneeling form of Sasuke and smirks. Well, let's end this, shall we? He taunts before jumping, backing and yelling, Sonic Blade, and rushing forward, slashing Sasuke as he passes before jumping of the walls, repeating the process several times before coming to a stop with his back turned to the bleeding Uchiha. Naruto swings his keyblade splattering the arena floor with the blood that was on them as Sasuke falls over unconscious from the pain. Naruto looks over to Genma, who was standing off to the side. "He's done, you might as well call the med. ICS to patch him up," he says, snapping Genma out of his stupor as he calls for the medics. After the medics take Sasuke away, Gaara enters the arena again and stands across from Naruto. Genma looks between the two and, getting nods from both of them, says, "Now the Chunin exam finals. Match between Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and Gaara of Sand, begin," he yells before jumping back. Gaara wastes no time and sand pops out of the gourd on his back before flying towards Naruto. Naruto sees the sand coming and raises Oathkeeper before yelling, "Water," blasting a medium-sized volley of water at the sand, turning it to mud before it falls harmlessly to the arena floor. As the mud hit the floor, Gaara raises some sand into the air above him before smiling psychotically. "That's it, Uzumaki, make me feel alive. Killing you will prove my existence for a long time, sand shuriken," he yells, sending a shower of sand at Naruto. Naruto sees the sand coming and smirks. "It won't be that easy, Gaara, protect," he yells as a clear bubble-like shield forms around him right before the sand hits him. As the shield protects him from the sand, Naruto begins to think, "Let's see, based on what I saw during his match with Lee, Gaara has a secondary shield of sand as a form of armor to protect him. I could try using fire or its higher forms, but there is no guarantee it will affect it, and I don't want to kill him in the event it does. I can tell that he has a lot of darkness in his heart, so I will need to unlock it, but due to him being the host of a Biju and Shukaku no less, it could take the form of the Biju which I see and let happened in such a populated area." Naruto begins to form a plan right as his shield fades and Gaara's attack ends. He raises both his keyblades, pointing them at Gaara, and thinks, "Well, here goes nothing," before yelling, "Watera," sending a large wave of water at Gaara, drenching him and causing his sand armor to turn to mud and fall to the arena floor. Gaara glares at Naruto before creating a dome of sand around him and a floating eye of sand. Back in the competitors' booth, Temari and Kankuro curse seeing this as it is ahead of schedule. Naruto stares at the dome for a minute, wondering Gaara is up to when he hears Kurumi, who had been watching the fight on a big screen TV from within the mindscape, yell, "Naruto-kun, you have to break that shield, he is trying to release Shukaku." She yells frantically. Naruto, hearing this, curses out loud before dismissing his keyblades as they vanish in a flash of light. "All right, Gaara, so you want to play that way, huh? Well, I was hoping to save this move for a later time, but oh well," he says before forming a Rasengan in his right hand, shocking everyone that he knew one of the fourth Hokage's signature jutsu and was able to use it at such a young age. Naruto smirks. "Allow me to introduce one of my father's original, just the Rasengan," he says to the sphere of sand. "However, I have done what my father was unable to do and taken it a step further," he says, shocking everyone as the Rasengan gains a point before expanding to cover his entire forearm and growing in size, making it look and sound like a giant drill. Naruto raises his the dry LL-like Rasengan at the sand sphere before placing his left hand on his right bicep to stabilize it. "Behold the next evolution of the Rasengan," he yells before charging at the sand sphere. When Naruto is just about to the sphere, he yells, "Giga Rasen Drill Breaker," and slams the attack into the shield, drilling into it and sending sand flying before it punches through, and Naruto feels it connect with Gaara's arm, causing Gaara to scream in pain before Naruto ends the attack and jumps back. Inside the sphere of sand, Gaara puts his hand to his arm and it comes back wet. "What is this blood, my blood?" he yells before letting out a roar and drops the sphere of sand. When the sphere drops and Gaara is revealed, his appearance has changed. His right arm is covered in sand and looks like a claw. He right side of his face is covered in sand and looks like the face of Shukaku, complete with the golden-colored eye with a black plus sign-shaped pupil. Suddenly Naruto notices feathers start to fall from above the arena and recognizes it as a genjutsu and makes the release sign. All throughout the stands, hidden sand and sound shinobi come out of hiding and begin to attack everyone near them. To be intercepted by hidden leaf shinobi that disguised themselves as civilians and those that were in the open. Temari and Kankuro rush into the arena and pick up Gaara and escort him out of the arena towards the forests. Surround Konaha as their Jonin sensei faces off against Genma. Naruto notices an explosion in the cage's booth and looks to see the Kazekage, Mizukage, Hokage, and Jiraiya who had remained hidden as one of the Hokage's guards up on the roof encased inside of a purple barrier, and the Kazekage rip his face off to reveal Orochimaru. Kakashi jumps down next to Naruto. Naruto talk. EA team and go after Gaara, you know what to do, he says, getting a nod from Naruto before leaving to take out for enemies. Naruto creates a clone. Go up to the cages, you know what to do, he says, getting a nod from the clone before it runs towards the barrier. Naruto then rushes towards the direction Gaara and his siblings went. The invasion of Konaha had begun. End chapter 5. Invasion continues. Hello everyone, I would first like to say that I am really sorry for the extremely long delay in getting this chapter out for all of you. My reason behind such a delay is a severe loss of motivation in regards to continuing this story after all of the flames I received regarding giving Naruto the Keyblades. However, after a few months and working on my other stories, I have regained my motivation to continue this story. I will say this only once: there is a reason for Naruto having the Keyblades and they play a significant role in the overarching plot of the story. Additionally, if I receive such an amount of flames like did before, I will end up deleting this story. It is only thanks to a very few people that I even considered continuing this story at all after all the shit I received. Anyway, here is the next chapter, which will likely cover the invasion and maybe a little of the aftermath. It also might be a little shorter than normal, but that is due to me trying to get back into the swing of things regarding this story. Now I won't be answering a lot of reviews in this chapter since a lot of them were pertaining to my including of the Keyblades, so I will just give a general response. Like I stated above, the Keyblades have a significant role to play in future events of the story and were NTO included just for the sake of them being in the story. Naruto gained the Keyblades during his time in the Jurassic Park universe, and I will show this during a flashback in an upcoming chapter, most likely within the next 1 or 2 depending on if I finish the invasion this chapter or not. Us to ask that people stick with it for now and withhold their final judgment of the inclusion of the Keyblades until everything regarding them has been put out in the open. Calibros. I think you might be right about the Byakugan coming from the Sage's brother, but I can't be sure. I have seen Naruto the last movie yet to be 100% sure, however if it did I will go back and edit that at some point. Now in regards to Naruto vs Neji. Yes, Naruto was a bit sadistic, but it was to teach Neji a lesson. Now as for Naruto revealing so many trump cards, they aren't really trump cards since he hasn't even scratched the surface of all his moves. You have to remember that he spent nearly 10 years in the Jurassic Park universe training while also raising his Dino kids and working for Hammond, so he is bone to have quite a few tricks up his sleeve. Phoenix Warehouse Productions. Thank you. That is another thing I was thinking of in regards to the giving Naruto the Keyblades that makes sickney for them being in the story. No vigilance. Possibly I haven't gotten that far yet in regards to planning things like that. Death's silent approach. Naruto is mentally around 21 to 22 years old when he returns from the Jurassic Park universe, but as I already stated, he went back to his 13-year-old body that then received a sudden growth spurt to accommodate his massive increase in chakra, so he is now physically 15. Hope that clears things up for you. Also, I have a new poll up to determine when Naruto will return to the Jurassic Park universe for the events of Jurassic World and would appreciate if you would vote since it determines how quickly I can get these chapters out to all of you, since some of the choices take place fairly soon. Finally, I have some new stories up and it would mean a lot if you gave them a look at. In addition to that, I also have some new story challenges and it would mean a lot to me if someone decided to take up one or more of the challenges. Just please PM me if you do, so I know who to follow so that I can read the story. As Naruto gives chase to Gaara and his siblings, the Jonin senseis begin counter-attacking the sand and sound shinobi that were hidden in the stands. Kakashi ducks under an Oto shinobi's kunai before stabbing him through the throat with his own kunai. It looks like Naruto was right about Orochimaru planning an attack. Oh, and I'm on 20 inches, he says cow. Sing in observation before listing how many kills he has already. Off to the side, guy hears this and frowns. Indeed, the enemy is most unyouthful, and I'm on 19 inches, he says as he delivers a brutal punch to an enemy's chest, caving in his ribcage and causing one of them to pierce his heart, killing him instantly. A little further down Anko is fighting of a group of Odo shinobi with Hinata watching her be. Of course Naruto-kun was right, he was the one who discovered the Snake Temm's plan at the beginning of the month break and brought it to Hokage-sama's attention. He also has been doing a ton of recon using his summons for the month and found all of the enemy's hiding spots. Oh, and I'm on 25. She says as she launches some of her snake summons from her sleeves and they bite into the necks of he enemy, paralyzing them before she slices their necks. Asuma, who just finished off one of his opponents, blocks a strike from another enemy using his trench knives. Naruto is very impressive, but has anyone thought to send him some backup since he is going after the Jinchuriki of the Aikibi and his siblings? He asks only for a moment of silence to take place before they all yell, "Shit!" at the same time causing Asuma to sweat drop. Asuma then turns to the genin who are holding off a few sound shinobi by working together. Shikamaru take a team and go after Naruto to provide support, he says, getting a nod from the genin as he, Shino, and Kiba head off after Naruto. With the cages, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru inside the barrier. Orochimaru had just revealed himself to his former sensei, teammate, and the Mizukage. Kukuku, well, isn't this a happy reunion? I had expected to face off against Sarutobi sensei, but I am surprised that not only is my loser of a former teammate here but so is the new god. I'm Mizukage, he says, taunting them. Hiruzen scowls. Orochimaru, today is the day I right a wrong I committed long ago and finally kill you, he snarls with venom, and a little sadness at what one of his former students has become. Orochimaru's sweat drops hearing Jiraiya's rant. She had an Adam's apple bigger than both of ours combined, and there was clearly a bulge in the front of her pants. He reasons only to gain a tick mark on his forehead when he realizes they are getting off track. Wait a minute, how did we even get on this subject in the first place? He yells, getting a giggle from me. And sweat drops from his four shinobi maintaining the barrier. Orochimaru then clears his throat. Now where were we? Oh yeah, that's right, blah blah blah, typical evil guy speech, blah blah blah, prepare to die and all that stuff, he says, causing everyone to once again gain a sweat drop on the backs of their heads before he goes through some handles and yells, Kuchio's no jutsu, Edo Tensai, and SLA. Miss his palm on the roof, causing a pair of coffins to rise from the ground before popping open to reveal the Shodaime and Nadaime Hokages Hashirama and Tobarama Senju. Hirsuen growls seeing this. Auric, Himaru, how dare you use that foul jutsu and disturb the rest of my senseis? He yells in outrage. The snake Sanin just chuckles hearing this. Oh Satobi sensei, it is just perfect, you will meet your end at the hands of the two who taught. He gloats before throwing two kunai with a seal tag on them into the backs of the former Hokage's heads, causing their eyes to glaze over before they drop into fighting stances. However, before anyone can make a move, they notice Naruto appear outside the barrier. Naruto, what are you doing here? He asks. Naruto shrugs his shoulders. Sorry Gigi, the boss is chasing after Gaara, I'm just a clone. Now as for why I am here, it's because the boss thought you might need a hand so he sent me, says with a foxy smile. Orochimaru laughs hearing this. Oh, this is richa. ND, what do you a lowly genin think you can do here? He asks mockingly. The clone just smile before extending his hand as oblivion appears in his hand. Oh, nothing much, just even the playing field a little, he says as a light appears at the end of oblivion before shooting out in a line impacting the barrier, causing it to flicker. Naruto chuckles. You see, keyblades can open just about nay lock and he thing about barriers power by Fuinjutsu is that they are basically just one Gion lock, he says, causing Orochimaru to pale as Naruto says, release. And he barrier disappears. Naruto dismisses Obali. Vionen smiles. Now if you will excuse me, I am needed at the village walls, he says cheekily before giving a two-fingered salute and vanishing in a shushin. Orochimaru gulps as he sees a large grow P of Anbu appear all around the roof and at the smiling faces of the Hokage, Mizukage, and Jiraiya. He even swears he sees the reanimated bodies of Hashirama and Tobarama crack the tiniest of smiles. Orochimaru then sums up his current situation in 2 words, oh shit. As the battle begins. Village walls. Ibiki Morino was not having a good day. First he broke his favorite coffee mug, then the A fee machine in the I&T department broke as he was getting a cup of coffee, resulting in him instead getting a cup of coffee filled with all the sludgy coffee grains. Then to top things off, he gets word from the Hokage that there was going to be an invasion today during the Chunin exam finals, and sure enough there was, which leads him to his current position standing on top of the village walls. A group of shinobi staring out at the charging army of sound and sand shinobi. Ibiki sighs and is about to give the order to charge when he spots a Naruto pop up next to him. "Kid, what the hell are you doing here?" he asks. Naruto looks over Ibiki. "I am just a clone but have order from Hokage-sama to assist in repelling the enemy," he says, getting a skeptical look from Ibiki. "Ibiki, kid, how the hell do you expect to help us when you're just a clone?" he asks, rubbing the bridge of his nose in frustration. The clone just chuckles. "Well, that's easy like this," he says before walking to the edge of the wall and smiling upon noticing the enemy about halfway through the large area of tall grass that was left to grow the past month. The clone then takes a deep breath before letting out a series of coughing-like sounds and then stepping back. Ibiki just stares at the clone in confusion. "Kid, how exactly is you coughing loudly going to help us?" he asks, confused and starting to think the kid has lost it. The clone smiles sadistically. "Why, that was the signal for the slaughter to begin," he says before gesturing for Ibiki to stand next to him and get a better look. Ibiki walks up to the side of the clone and sees a large amount of paths being made through the tall grass, as if something is running through the grass yet remaining hidden. As he continues to watch, he sees some of them converge on the stragglers of the force before they are taken below the grass, and he catches the flash of a tail before hearing a scream. Shortly following the first series of screams, more and more of the attacking force are pulled under the tall grass before all hell breaks loose. The enemy force begins to panic as they are being picked off until they begin to scatter. However, this only makes things easy for the creatures as more and more sand and sound shinobi begin to be killed. Ibiki then watches as one of the enemy turns around to run back the way he came, only for a large bipedal lizard-like creature with two large dew claws on each foot to leap in the air and sinks its claws and teeth into him, causing him to scream as he is tackled to the ground and was ripped apart. Ibiki is speechless by what he just saw. "Beautiful, aren't they?" he hears someone say, only to turn and see the clone with a smile on his face that beams pride if he is reading it right. Ibiki gulps. "What are they?" he asks, wondering what in the world the creatures that are currently tearing through the enemy forces like an okomaiki at an all-you-can-eat buffet. The clone smiles. "They are velociraptors, a species of dinosaur that is incredibly smart. Hunts in packs, and specializes in ambush tactics. They are just one of the species of dinosaurs that are a part of the Dino summoning contract that I am not only the first person to sign but also the creator of," the clone says, shocking Ibiki as they continue to watch the carnage below. With the original Naruto was jumping from tree limb to tree limb in pursuit of Gaara and his siblings when he sensed three people following him and turns to see Shikamaru, Shino, and Kiba coming up behind him. "What are you three doing out here?" he asks. Shikamaru sighs. "We were told to follow you and provide backup," he says before muttering, "Troublesome," getting a chuckle from the others. Kiba laughs. "Yeah, they figured you could use our awesomeness," he says, getting sighs from Shikamaru and Shino. "Also, not that I remember it. Since when are you seeing my sister and mother?" he yells. Naruto just sweat drops hearing this. "Really, Kiba, you want to do this now when we are in the middle of an invasion?" he asks. Kiba growls a little in response. "Fine, but after this you have some explaining to do," he yells as they continue to chase after Gaara and his siblings. A few minutes later, Shikamaru informs them that they are being followed by some sound shinobi, so he and Kiba stay behind to deal with them as Naruto and Shino continue on. A few minutes after that, Naruto and Shino come across Kankuro and Shino stays behind to fight him. A few minutes after Naruto leaves Shino to fight Kankuro, he finally catches up to Temari and Gaara. Gaara, however, is covered in and in a partial release of his biju. Naruto stares at Gaara before summoning Oathkeeper and Oblivion to his hands. "I see you have begun to release the Ikibi, Gaara," he says, alerting Gaara and Temari to his presence. Gaara grins maniacally upon noticing Naruto. "Uzumakimothersyemandsyourblod," he says in a mix of a normal and demonic voice as sand swirls around him. Naruto cracks his neck before getting in a stance with Oblivion held in a reverse grip parallel to his arm while Oathkeeper is held at his side. Well, let's get started, Gaara. After all, it's about tea. Me, somebody purifies your heart of the darkness within it, he says before charging at Gaara. Gaara launches a wave of sand at Naruto, which he dodges before launching a wave of water at Gaara, soaking tea. He sand and making it fall to the forest floor. Gaara then launches another wave of sand as a diversion as he gathers sand into the air. Dai Uzumaki. Sand shower. He yells as bullets of sand rain down on Naruto. Naruto sees the deadly shower of sand coming at him and curses before yelling, "Protect," encasing himself in the same protective bubble he used in the stadium as the sand beats against the shield. Naruto sees Gaara begin to get covered in more sand but also sees shadows begin to mix with the sand and curses, "Damn it, I have to hurry up and purify his heart or he will lose himself to darkness and become a heartless," he says before noticing the sand shower lessening and dispels his shield and charges at Gaara. Gaara notices this and launches more waves of sand at Naruto, which Naruto dodges as he continues to run at Gaara. Naruto reaches Gaara and thrusts Oblivion towards Gaara's heart. "Let this Keyblade purify the darkness within," he yells, piercing Gaara's chest as a bright light overtakes the two of them, causing Temurai to yell Gaara's name in fear that her brother might be dead. As the light dies down, Temari sees Naruto standing over a kneeling Gaara who has a look of peace on his face but is unharmed for someone who was just pierced through their chest. Naruto smiles down at Gaara. "Welcome back to the light, Gaara," he says, extending his hand to Gaara and helping him up. Gaara pats himself down to find himself unharmed. "What did you do, Uzumaki?" "Not only do I feel at peace but Mother is also in a similar state," he says, stunning Temari, who had just jumped down to his level and was standing by his side. Naruto smiles hearing this. "I used my Keyblades to purify your heart and the heart of Shukaku of the darkness that was threatening to overtake it and turn you into a heartless. Now I will explain more later, but for now I need the two of you to step back because the battle isn't over yet," he says as they turn their heads to see the leftover sand from Gaara's attacks mixing with shadows and growing into a huge monstrous form. The creature towered over them and was the size of and the form of Shukaku, the Ikibi no Tanuki Biju. However, it appeared to be out of a solid shadow, except it had lines of sand running down its body. Its eyes were a sickly yellow and in the center of its chest there was a large hole where its heart would be. Temari and Gaara look at the creature with fear written clearly on their faces. "What is that thing?" Temari shakily asks in fear. Naruto rolls his shoulders, popping a few kinks in them before lowering his Keyblade so they are at either side of him with the tips barely touching the ground. "That is the darkness that was in both Gaara's and Shukaku's hearts given form. When I purified their hearts of the darkness within them, it doesn't simply erase it. Instead, it forces it out of their hearts where it is then given a physical form. Only then can it be truly defeated by the Keyblades," he explains before Merc comes to his face as he stares as the fully formed Ikibi heartless. Naruto tightens his grip on his Keyblades. "Now let the real battle begin," he yells before charging at the Ikibi heartless while dragging the tips of his Keyblades along the ground. The final battle of the invasion had begun. End chapter 6. Quick and sorry for the cliffhanger, but I wanted to end the chapter there and focus on battle between Naruto and his first big fight next chapter. The next chapter will focus on Naruto's fight against the Ikibi heartless that is the culmination of all the darkness that was within Gaara and Shukaku's hearts. It will also likely cover the aftermath of the invasion as well as Naruto explaining quite a few things like his ability to use the Keyblades and how he got them, his time in the Jurassic Park universe, and his relationships with some of the ladies in his life. Dark Ikibi Boss Battle, Chapter 7, hello everyone, and I am really sorry for the extremely long delay regarding this chapter. It was due to many reasons, the chief among them being that I was waiting until my writing skills had improved so that I could make the fight scene in this chapter as epic as I had it envisioned in my mind. Now before I answer a couple of reviews, I have to announce that I will not be rewriting chapters 5 and 6, so the Keyblades are here to stay. Wild Wolf Child. I have to disagree. ITHU there I thought the original movie's Velociraptors looked the best, followed by a tie between Lost World and Jurassic Worlds, with JP3 feet looking the worst, mainly due to the stupid proto-feathers they had. Also, on a side note, all of the Velociraptors that Naruto can summon will look like the original movie ones. Amberthacat. Yes, this is still an open challenge. Well, that's all the reviews I will answer this time, since I am sure all of you are eager to jump right into the story. Oh, and before I forget, a fellow author by the name of Scheffelman has started a reading story of not only this story but also my Naruto X Star Wars crossover, Naruto the Next Chosen One, so please be sure to check them out. Naruto continued his charge at the Ikibi Heartless, his keyblades lightly dragging behind him, kicking up twin trails of dirt with the occasional spark from the odd rock they hit. He glared at the hulking behemoth of a Heartless that had just finished forming the blonde Keyblade wheel. Knew this was going to be an extremely difficult fight, so he began to formulate a plan. His first course of action needed to be getting a reading on the Heartless strength. With that in mind, he uttered scan, which resulted in his eyes briefly flashing green as the ability activated. In the upper right portion of his field of vision, a long green bar appeared. The bar then changed color to a deep orange color, and 3 small green squares appeared under it. In the upper left-hand corner of his vision, a small box appeared. In the box was a series of text that read, Ikibi Heartless, Strengths, Wind, Dark Sand. Weaknesses, Water x2, Fire by 2 inches appeared for a moment before fading away. Finally, in the bottom left corner of his vision, a blue bar appeared. The blue bar's length was roughly half the size of the green one in the top right corner. Naruto took note of this as the scan ability finished activating. The ability, which came with being a Keyblade wielder, was like a temporary dojutsu. Like its name implied, it allowed the user to scan an enemy and reveal their strengths, weakness, and how much health they had. However, the ability did have some drawbacks. The first one being that it had a constant drain on the user's mana, which was what powered the spells that Naruto used earlier. However, the actual amount the ability would actually drain was very minor. Another drawback to THE ability was that it could only be used on a single enemy at a time, so it wasn't very ideal in anything other than one-on-one fight. Finally, it could only fully be used against Heartless. While it could be used on human enemies, it wasn't as effective and would only show said enemy's health. With the ability fully activated, Naruto began his assault on the Heartless. He reached the Heartless and ashed at its right foot as he dashed past. The Heartless took notice of this and let out a loud shriek as it looked down at its attacker. Naruto noted a very small chunk of the Dark Ikibi's health bar deplete and cursed. He then jumped back to avoid being crushed as the Heartless slammed one of its massive arms down on where he just was, sending chunks of earth flying. Naruto raised his Keyblades to shield his face from the flying debris. After the debris stopped, he once again charged and slashed at the Dark Ikibi's right foot several times. Not breaking his chain of strikes, he quickly yelled, D, Sonic Blade, and began dashing back and forth using the surrounding trees as springboards. He kept the attacking going, gaining more and more speed with each jump from a tree, all the while slashing at the Dark Ikibi's foot as he passed. Soon he was going so fast that he was leaving afterimages, yet he kept up his assault. However, his attacking was broken when he was suddenly launched back several trees by a tentacle of sand. As Naruto stumbled to his feet, damn it, I got tunnel vision. He cursed, admonishing himself for making such a rookie mistake. He had been so focused on his attack that he became oblivious to the Dark Ikibi countering with a tentacle of sand. Naruto spits out a small glob of blood and winces slightly as he can tell a few of his ribs are broken. However, no sooner than he registers the pain than he can already feel the healing effects of Kurumi's chakra flooding his system. Naruto grins, feeling this take place. Thanks, Kurumi-chan, he thinks, sending a mental message to Kurumi. Kurumi just smiles slightly. You're welcome, Naruto-kun, but just be more careful, okay? She says while watching the fight from within the seal. Naruto chuckles a bit hearing this. I will try, but no promises. After all, I don't think Big and Ugly is going to be pulling any punches, he says through the link. Naruto grabs his right arm with his left and yanks hard, popping his shoulder back into the socket after it was dislocated in the collision with the trees. He then rolls it a few times before looking up to see the status of the Dark Ikibi's health. He notices that the O range bar is about halfway down, indicating his sonic blade did a pretty decent amount of damage. However, he then looks down to the blue bar and sees he is down to a little over 75% left. Seeing this, he frowns, as despite his sonic blade doing a fair bit of damage, the continued use of it took a decent chunk out of his mana reserves. While he could refill his mana reserves by either resting or having Kurumi use her chakra to do so, both ways took time to do. In the first case, he would have to dismiss his keyblades and deactivate his scan ability. This wasn't an option during this fight, since his keyblades were the most efficient way to combat the Dark Ikibi. Having Kurumi refill his mana reserves, on the other hand, allowed him to still use his keyblades. However, it was also very difficult, as Kurumi need to first siphon of some of her chakra. Then she had to change it into mana, which required all of her focus and would prevent her from healing him until she was done. There was also the danger of Kurumi accidentally giving him too much mana at once. If she misjudged the available space in his mana reserves, it would overload them. This was dangerous because if his mana reserves were overloaded, it could result in them literally burning him alive from the inside out. With all of this as mind, Naruto came to a decision. Kurumi, I need you to begin refilling my mana reserves. However, try and make enough to refill at least half of my reserves, he says through the mental link. Kurumi, hearing this, nods as she begins the lengthy process. Understood, and it will likely take me about 20 minutes to convert my chakra into mana, so keep that in mind, she says before she begins her task. Naruto nods, hearing this, as he gets an idea. He bites his thumb, drawing some blood before slamming his hand on the ground. Summoning Jutsu, Jade Fang. And two large clouds of smoke appear. As the smoke clears, it reveals Jade and Fang standing there in all of their glory. Naruto looks up at the two and smiles. Hey you two, I need your help with this fight, he says before gesturing over to the Dark Ikibi. Fang and Jade look over to the towering Heartless before back to their father. You got it, father, let's show this beast what happens when you mess with our family, Fang says with a savage grin that is matched by Jade's own. Naruto grins in a similar manner and stares at the two. You two just read my mind. Now how about we bring out the big guns, he suggests. Fang and Jade nod before gather their chakra, T-Rex style, enlargement jutsu, they say as they begin to rapidly grow in size. Within a few seconds, they have both grown to the same size as the Dark Ikibi, and Naruto hops up onto Fang's head. The two now massive dinosaurs let out a thunderous roar of challenge that shakes the surrounding trees and could be heard for miles. Chunin Exam Stadium. All fighting ceased momentarily the moment that Fang and Jade roared. Up on the stadium roof inside the Sandame, Jiraiya, Mei and the Anbu had managed to defeat the reanimated Tobirama and were currently fighting Orochimaru, his guards, and the reanimated Shodime when they heard the roar. Everyone turned to see the towering Dark Ikibi, Jade, and Fang with Naruto barely visible on his head. Jiraiya laughed seeing this. Well, there's something you don't see every day, he says. Orochimaru on the other hand begins to think the fight might be over. His plan had fallen apart as soon as it began, and he was currently pretty heavily injured. He no longer had use of his arms thanks to Jiraiya hitting him with a necrosis seal that caused his arms to essentially die and rot. The snake Sannin couldn't even use his rejuvenation jutsu to counter this, as Jiraiya modified the seal to stick to Orochimaru's very soul. Seeing his plan in shambles and his body not far behind, Orochimaru came to a decision. Everyone fall back, we are retreating. He orders before his guards throw smoke bombs and they all retreat. As the smoke clears, everyone takes notice that Orochimaru has escaped. The reanimated Shodime Hokage stops moving before his skin flakes away and turns to ash, revealing the dead body of Zaku Abium, one of the Sound Genin that lost in the prelims a month prior. Hiruzen stares at the dead body for a moment, cursing his fallen student before looking towards the Anbu. Go help with the defense of the village. Orochimaru may have fled, but we still have a battle to win. He orders as the Anbu shushan away to follow their orders. Hiruzen then turns to Jiraiya and Mei. We should go help Naruto combat whatever that monstrosity is, he says, getting nods from the two. However, before the three can even move, the shadow clone of Naruto that had broken the barrier reappears before them. Hey Gigi, the boss says to leave the dark Ikibi to him and D instead keep everyone as far away as possible, the clone says with a serious look. The three are shocked to hear this as Hirschman looks at the clone. Are you absolutely sure about this, Naruto, and what is that thing anyway? He asks. The clone nods his head. Yeah, the boss has it covered. Oh, and the boss has taken to calling it the dark Ikibi, and it is the heartless that is the culmination of all. The darkness that was in the hearts of Gaara and the Ikibi. The boss used his keyblades to purify their hearts, which caused the dark Ikibi to come to be, the clone explains, much to the group's shock. Hiruzen takes another look at the dark Ikibi before sighing and turning back to the clone. Very well, we will keep out of the fight, just tell Naruto to be careful, he says, getting a nod from the clone. The clone then rolls its neck. Well, if that's all, I will go ahead and dispel. The enemy forces that tried attacking from outside the walls have been eliminated, which only leaves the stragglers. Chi snuck into the village before the start of the invasion. However, all of you can easily handle this, so later, the clone says with a cheeky grin before dispelling in a cloud of smoke. The three left S. Till standing on the roof stared at the spot the clone stood moments before for a few moments. They then chuckled slightly at the clone's action before going off to take care of the remaining enemy forces inside the village. Back with Naruto. As Naruto stood atop of Fangs, he got the memories of his clone dispelling itself, which caused him to grin savagely. His plan to counter the enemy forces you waited outside the village's walls had gone perfectly. Then there were his clone's final interactions with the Hokage, Mizukage, and Jiraiya, which caused him to sweat drop slightly. However, his grin lessened as he received the information that nobody was going to interfere with his fight against the dark Ikibi. This meant he didn't have to worry about possible collateral damage on account of someone getting in his way, which meant he could finally cut loose with some of his big guns, so to speak. Play Badass Battle Music God Mode by Badass Music, or Red Like Roses 2 Instrumental by RWBY. Without needing to be told, Fang and Jade charged at the dark Ikibi. Jade reached it first and slammed into it with a might headbutt that sent it skidding back several meters. She then moved out of the way as Fang came in and clamped down on the dark Ikibi's right arm, sinking his massive teeth into the Heartless's flesh. Naruto took this opportunity to jump off of Fang's head and slashed at the dark Ikibi's left eye several times. The massive Heartless threw its head back and let out a mighty howl of pain, launching Naruto from its head. It then swiped its right arm back, resulting in Fang losing his hold on it and skidding several meters through some trees behind it. As Naruto flew through the air, he twisted his body to right himself and then landed back atop of Fang's head. Jade took his opportunity to rush and slam her massive tail into the Heartless, sending it flying to the right several meters and crashing through more trees. Naruto, seeing the Heartless momentarily stunned and surrounded by wood, took advantage of this. He held both his keyblades above his head as he prepared his attack. As he did this, he yelled, "Fang, Jade, bring the heat." Hearing their father's command, the T-Wo dinosaurs began to gather their charka before they simultaneously roared, T-Rex style, Hellfire Inferno Jutsu, as they belched forth massive streams of blue fire. The twin streams of fire instantly incinerated the trees in its path. The ground beneath the flames immediately turning to glass due to the heat of the attacks. The flames slammed into the dark Ikibi, completely engulfing it and setting it ablaze. The Heartless an unholy shriek as it was set ablaze and continued to burn. However, its pain was far from over. Naruto, seeing Fang's and Jade's attack engulf their target, leapt into the air. As he soared upward, he gathered his mana and a fireball appeared at the tips of his keyblades. The fireball quickly grew in size until it was nearly as big as Kurumi in her full-size form. Naruto then swung his keyblades down in front of him with all his might as he yelled, "Faraga!" sending the massive fireball at its target. The enormous fireball slammed into the already ablaze Heartless with such force that it caused a minor earthquake. For a split second all was quiet, then the attack combined with the blue fire supplied by Fang and Jade. This resulted in a massive explosion of blue and yellow-orange fire that formed a massive tower of flames shooting into the sky for as high as the eye could see. Once again all fighting stopped throughout the village as everyone stared in awe, shock, and horror at the massive tower of flames. The heat from the tower of flames being so intense that they could feel it despite being a few miles away. To all of them it felt as if they were in the middle of Suna's desert during the hottest day in recorded history. They could even see all trees within at least a few dozen meters from them wilt and die as all of the moisture within them was boiled away instantly. Naruto, Fang, and Jade, all of whom are within the protective bubble shield of a protega that Naruto erected immediately after he launched the massive Furaga. They looked on the dark Ikibi burned within the epicenter of the massive column of flames. For several hundred meters around them all plant life had been incinerated and the ground glassed. Naruto, who was panting heavily, looked to his mana bar and winced upon seeing it at barely 1/10 of full. He then looked up at the dark Ikibi's health bar and grinned. The massive combination attack had injured it so heavily. Why that the Heartless had changed from orange to green, and W is at 75% with all of the small green boxes under it gone. This meant that attack had done so much damage that it ate through nearly 4 whole bars, as each green box represented another full bar of health. As Naruto regained his breath, Kurumi finished her task. Naruto-kun, I have the mana ready, I am infusing it to your reserves now, she says. As the blue orb of energy in front of her was absorbed into the floor and the entire floor glowed blue briefly. As Naruto felt the influx of mana flood his reserves, he inhaled. The mana coursed through his system, filling his veins and making them glow blue so brightly that they were visibly through this skin. As the glowing died down and the mana finished entering his reserves, he exhaled an SM. All blue mist of pure mana was expelled, signifying the completion of the infusion. While all this happened, the dark Ikibi continued to burn within the tower of flames. However, it suddenly spun around, quickly shattering the glassed ground beneath it. Using the unharmed earth beneath the glass in conjunction with its spinning, the Heartless was able to extinguish the flames covering it. This ultimate resulted in the tower of flames being extinguished. The now enraged Heartless began to gather its remaining sand and combining it with orbs of pure darkness that were being expelled from its body. Then the whole combination began rising up high into the air and forming a large black cloud. Naruto, Fang, and Jade watched on edge as this series of events took place. All of a sudden the black cloud began to rain medium-sized orbs. When the orbs made contact with the ground or the bubble shield, they suddenly exploded violently with tremendous force. The force of the explosions on the bubble shield staggered the 3 within it. From within the seal, Kurumi saw this and the attack preceding it, resulting in her eyes widening in both shock and panic. Naruto-kun, each of those orbs is a miniature-tailed beast bomb. She yelled frantically. Naruto's eyes widen hearing this. Fucking hell, are you kidding me? Fang, Jade, get back to the summon realm. Immediately, he yells. Both Fang and Jade jump. A little bit, having never heard their father yell at them before, even more so in such a frantic yet determined tone. But father, Jade begins, only for Naruto cut her off by saying, no buts, get back there now. I can probably avoid the vast majority if not all of the orbs, but the 2 of you are like massive targets, he says, not yelling anymore halfway through. Fang and Jade look each other in he eye for a moment before nodding. Very well father, but please be safe, Fang says before the 2 disappear in 2 large smoke clouds. Seeing both of his children safely back in the summon realm, Naruto drops the shield and makes a mad dash towards the dark Ikibi. As he dashes and dodges the raining mini-tailed beast bombs, he notices the dark Ikibi's health bar steadily depleting as the attack continues. He theorizes that the Heartless is actually using a part of itself in each of the orbs. Naruto is suddenly blasted to the side by a near miss. However, he quickly gets back to his feet and continues his charge undeterred. As he nears the feet of the massive Heartless, one of the mini-tailed beast bombs lands directly in front of him and explodes, and Naruto is engulfed in the resulting explosion. The dark Ikibi looks down at the explosion that Naruto was engulfed by and grins. However, the grin fades as Naruto emerges from the explosion. Despite emerging from the explosion, Naruto is far from unharmed. His shirt has been burned away, showing the 2nd-degree burns covering his chest. His pants have similarly been burned, turning them into a pair of badly burned shorts. His trench coat, which once went down to the backs of his shins, now only barely went down to the small of his back and was covered in soot and ash. The left side of his face had severe 2nd-degree burns covering most of it. He had several puncture wounds in his legs, arms, and chest due to debris, with a few of them bleeding profusely. Lastly, his hair had been heavily singed and was now significantly shorter. As Naruto continued his charge despite his energies, Kurumi worked overtime, flooding his system with her chakra in an attempt to heal him. His wounds began to glow red and steam as the flesh began sticking itself back together, or in the case of his burns, being replaced by new pink-tinted flesh. Naruto reached the Dark Ikibi's right foot and stabbed both his keyblades deep into its flesh. He then drew MPED onto the foot and began to run up its body, dragging his blades behind him and cutting deep twin gashes in the flesh of the Heartless. As he ran up the Dark Ikibi's body, Naruto let out a loud PR. Yell, his injuries steaming the whole trek and leaving a trail of steam behind him. Naruto reached the head of the massive Heartless, yet he continued on, jumping high into the air. He reached the top of its head. As he reached the apex of his ascent, the steam from his healing wounds pooled around him, forming a small cloud. Suddenly the cloud was burst apart as Naruto rocketed back down towards the Dark Ikibi with such speed that it created a sonic boom. Naruto began to spin end over end and slammed into the top of the Dark Ikibi's head and quickly began to saw through the body of the massive Heartless. As he saw deeper and deeper into its body, gouts of sand and liquid shadow began spewing out in his wake. All too soon the still spinning Naruto sawed through the entirety of the massive Heartless. For a split second the Heartless was motionless before ultimately the spilt halves of it crashed to the ground on either side of the blonde. The remains soon began to dissolve into a black misty smoke and fade away. Breathing heavily, Naruto looked at the rapidly disappearing remain with a savage grin. "That's what you get for ruining one of my favorite coats, you fucker," he snarls before spitting on the remains. Naruto then turns and smirks as he sees the rapidly approaching forms of the Hokage, Mizukage, Jiraiya, Anko, Hinata, Tsume, Hana, Jonin senseis, and the majority of their genin teams. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.